Welcome to the GreatBase Tennis Podcast, episode 100. It's an honor to have Jeremy Wurtzman with us. I'm Steve Smith, and we're coming to you from Boynton Beach, Florida. We're working out of the FM Tennis Performance Center. Let me tell you a little about Jeremy. My son Connor, when he was 2, called him Germany. Then I would say it's Jiminy Cricket. He's a former student, longtime friend, fellow upstate New Yorker. There's Hicks and Slicks. He is definitely a slick. From Rochester, New York. Son of Steve and Judy Wurtzman. Brother Mark Wurtzman. Husband to Gretchen. Erie, PA. Played tennis at Purdue. I always tell people, really pay attention. If you were not an athlete and you didn't marry an athlete, really pay attention. I think to bring up an athlete, marry an athlete. I have a few opinions. We like to stay with fact-based. So, father of 2 daughters and a son, Quinn 10, Mia 9, Buck 5. He's currently the head tennis coach at the Indiana University. 15 years as a college coach. He was an associate head coach, University of Michigan. You taking notes if I make any mistakes? Yeah. Actually, I went to the internet, wrote some of these things down, or did some homework. Head coach, University of Denver, women. So you coached on both sides, men and women. Assistant at his alma mater, the University of Ohio State. We can ask you about the. Is in the Ring of Honor there. We'll go through that. Assistant at Denver as well. At Ohio State, he's an All-American. He's in the Ohio State Hall of Fame. We have to ask him if he has a building on campus like Jack Nicklaus does. I won an individual title, the National ITA Indoor, ranked number 1. Not number 2, but number 1 in the NCAAs. National Senior Player of the Year. Won 42 matches his senior year. This is where I did a little math. College tennis, played 312 matches. Played 1 year at the University of Florida. Played almost all 4 years at number 1. He won 74% of his singles matches. 132 and 45. 64% in doubles. It's interesting, the pro sets. I have to ask you, did you guys play 2 out of 3? We'll come back to that. Yeah. 86-49. While he was a coach at Ohio State, they were in the finals. They lost to USC. That was at A&M, right?
That's right.
Just a few more things, and we'll get going here with long intro. You didn't think that I was going to have this long intro for you, huh? IU, 241 students have participated in the Olympics. 241 participants from 26 countries. I told Jeremy I may say a few things that he's never heard before.
Yeah, learning today.
55 gold medals, 17 silver, 30 bronze. Of the 241, 109 from swimming and diving. We should spend more time on the academics, vast and extremely diversified undergraduate, graduate programs. May be the best place I read today if you want to learn Zulu in America. If you want to learn to speak Zulu fluently. Rated as one of the most beautiful campuses. So I took a campus tour before we started this. But Jeremy Wurtzman, great to have you here. I met Jeremy, I believe he was 10, almost 11. But let's talk about the early years. What happened between year 1 and year 10? Your connection in tennis.
Well, first off, I think the one thing we got wrong is I'm a hick, not a slick. So coming from upstate here.
Yeah. No, I definitely get that wrong.
Haven't been called a slick too much.
We definitely are hicks. I was born in Potsdam, New York. You're from Rochester, so you're much more sophisticated. Potsdam, really, really small place. Not as small as South Colton, down the street. I was knowing Jeremy, he's 40, so it takes like 2 minutes to catch up. I've known him 30 years. But yeah, tell us how you got started in tennis.
Yeah, sure. No, my dad was a big golfer, and we were always around the club. And my brother decided to start hitting the ball around. My brother Mark, he was about 7 years older, and whatever he did, I wanted to tag along and try to do the same. So tennis became his passion. He had played a number of different sports. He was a late starter, probably around 10, 11 years old. So I was pretty young, 3, 4 years old, and just started hitting against the wall and fell in love with tennis, and was fortunate enough to learn a great fundamentals at an early age, and tennis has been my life ever since.
One thing with your dad, I talked to him so many times. I know he's a very, very good golfer as well. I tell people in tennis, you should have a golfer's mentality. So your dad was easier to convince about forehands and backhands because of technique. And then also, too, your easygoing Mark, he taught tennis for me a couple summers. He went on, and not too many players come out of the snowbanks of Rochester. He played Ohio State, correct?
That's right. Yeah, he played 4 years at Ohio State.
He taught for me a few summers. But he always let you tag along. I think that's always important too, because he beat down the path. He went down the tennis path before you did, right?
Yeah, he made the mistakes, and I'm sure we made plenty of mistakes. I'm sure I made plenty of mistakes, but not as many as if I wasn't around him those years. So,
did you play other sports growing up?
Yeah, I mean, I played a bit of soccer. Baseball was another big sport that I really liked playing. But I would say tennis was really what I focused on at an early age.
Do you think that was because of an individual sport and it was all on you?
Yeah, I just always loved it. I was just, loved going to the courts, loved playing tournaments, loved competing. And yeah, I mean, I think that was definitely something I was drawn to, that it was individual and it was on me. But, I think there's some athleticism that I probably missed out on by not focusing by focusing on tennis maybe a little bit early. I think it could have been beneficial.
By the time I met you, you were full time.
Yeah.
Tennis. But with baseball, it certainly would help you with your throwing motion, the service motion. Yeah. Also hand-eye. I mean, I can remember being a kid when they invented the big plastic bat for wiffle ball.
Yeah.
That's the only I couldn't hit in baseball, couldn't hit in softball, but I could hit in wiffle ball. Soccer, actually very, very good for the feet. But upstate New York, there's not too much time where you can play those sports outside.
Right, yeah. So you're looking at end of April through June. And yeah, I mean, then you're playing the summer tournaments in tennis. So yeah, there wasn't much time. I remember a lot of the seasons would overlap with maybe zonals or Challenge Cup or the tournaments like that, and I'd miss the playoffs because, it was really only in the summer that you could play baseball and soccer.
I have a sister who went to Nazareth. I have a brother who started at St. John Fisher Transfer. Those are two, I believe, both Jesuit schools in Rochester.
Yes.
And quite a few relatives. The aunts were school teachers, and uncles worked for Kodak.
Yep, Kodak, Xerox, and Bausch and Lomb, all from Rochester.
Rochester was known as a real think tank. I went to work in Rochester, Tennis Corporation of America. I think maybe they're calling all their clubs now Midtown. But why don't you tell our listeners about when I met you? Any thoughts about when I showed up?
Yeah, I mean, the first thought that comes to mind is I remember I was at the, at Midtown we had this nice cafe that was, it had every candy bar, every soda, everything you could imagine, and I probably spent more time there than I did on the tennis court. And I remember getting a Reese's. I got off the court, went and got a Reese's, and you were kind of just observing, you're watching over, and then you just said, "Oh, okay." So, and you just looked like you're paying attention, but didn't really say much. But when you did start up, that was definitely, there wasn't any candy bars at the snack bar that I could get.
At one time, Midtown had 16 indoor courts, I think, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
No outdoor courts, just 16 indoor courts. The pros, a number of them did run small Memorial Day to Labor Day programs. David Earlywine, Joe Lewandis, and Deanna Rios, that's her maiden name, Rios. They all worked there, and I talked to all three of them, and they told me, don't take this job. So I didn't listen to them, and I took the job. But based on what they told me, and they just didn't think it was the right fit for me. And we'll go through that. So I show up, and I just had one request that I not teach for the first month. I just observe. But what I did during that first month is I skill tested everyone, filmed everyone. Didn't have the resources to film everybody playing, just film their technique. Then also I took the two biggest revenue generators. They had both been fired. And I found out later, Doug Cash, who was a COO, CFO, he still does a lot of things in tennis. I think he's probably the number one briefcase guy, and I say that in a very flattering, respectful way, that he really knows so much about the business of tennis. I was coming in with the idea that I would be able to influence. They had 50 plus clubs. But he told me later they brought me in because the pro staff, I mean, there was actually a fist fight before I got there with these two revenue generators. So I took the two students that had taken the most lessons, I filmed them and I taught them in secrecy in the squash courts, and I did pre-post videos. But the coaching staff, and there's almost 25 of them, not all full-time, but they thought I was a pretty easygoing guy because the first month I didn't really say anything. But I had you on film. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I remember to this day filling out the goal sheet, and I think I probably exaggerated or thought I was a lot better than I was. I remember putting, play at UCLA, top 3 internationally. I had very, very high goals that were not probably the way I was hitting, the way I was playing. Were gonna, be they were just dreams really. They weren't gonna happen for me. And then we filmed, and I could hit the ball, but there was definitely some flaws. And yeah, I remember it was I remember like yesterday. It was all the same format, the same process that is done today.
Well, he's being very humble because I believe he was the highest ranked player in the building. He was number 3 in the East in the 12 and unders. And I'm always saying it's difficult to convince people when you use science, logic, and imagery. And if you go to our course, Tennis Intelligence Applied, we have film of Jeremy at age 11, and I think at age 13, there's quite a growth spurt. He looks like a different guy. And we showed the shot that was most inefficient, which was his backhand volley, one-handed backhand volley. He was like Zorro. But he was number 3 in the East. So what I did is Richard Hernandez, who's been a guest on our podcast, he's working up in Toronto, which is just around the lake. Both Rochester and Toronto are on Lake Ontario. And there's a girl who's just a little younger, but she was a girl. Michelle Greenwood, she's a lawyer now in Toronto. So I said, Richard, we set up a clinic, and I need to have Michelle Greenwood come down and beat Jeremy Wurtzman in a set. And thankfully she did. Thankfully she did. So that gave me a little more ammunition besides just the film. So, and I think, again, your father with the golf mentality. Your brother Mark, for example, he wasn't there. He was off at college already.
Yeah.
Then I found out later that he had this humongous serve, but unlike yourself, he really was not taught that well technically.
Right.
He couldn't follow up that big, huge serve with volleys.
Yeah, I mean, Michelle, that was a tough one. It was a Sunday morning, 9 a.m. Got dropped off at the court. Got there. I think we were probably on court 16 there, closest to the wall. And you said, all right, we're going to play a set. She beat me, and I sat on the side almost in tears after that. So it still hurts today.
But ways to change the culture. With 25 pros, the expression, the horse is out of the barn. I remember having Julie Scott, who was on her way to Stanford on a full scholarship. It was paid for by TCA. I just remember telling management, okay, this is what I want to do. And I, not only, that was one of the first things. She came up, and Richard, we had pros come, but when she came up, Stanford's kind of the wow thing.
Yeah.
And she knew all the routines and showed all the routines. With But it wasn't very long after that you won the national 14s. I've got down in my notes, your brother said before you showed up came to the first practice after you got back from winning, he goes, hey, remember, now he's going to give you a harder time. And he was right. The Taylor Dent, he's from your age group, and that was one thing. He was not at that tournament. But correct? Is that right?
He was not.
Yeah, but to win a national tournament, that's not easy. There's a club in Japan that I went years ago and spent a lot of time, and I remember they had a party for me when I was over there because they had their first national champion. It's not easy to be a national champion at any age, any sport. With what am I going to tell you, our listeners? I got to get this in. Greg Yahaya. I love this story. What comes to your mind when I think Greg Yahaya?
Let's say the Prince Mono racket.
There you go. The Blue Prince Mono racket.
Slice backhand, slice forehand.
Such a great guy. He had some fancy VW. He let me borrow it. I had to borrow it for some reason. And I remember coming back and said, Greg, I'm sorry, but I got in an accident.
Oh, geez.
But no, I've been helping him with his backhand. And I said, okay, you're going to play Wurtzman. And he said, you're just going to hack and lob. And anyway, so I never let Jeremy play him again after that. I was known for that. It's like, okay, yeah, you got to win over this kid. And now we have that internal scar. We would say, you remember the time you lost to Yahaya? Years go by, and I bring that up to Jeremy. I think Greg is still there.
Yeah, I believe he's still at Midtown all these years. Good for him.
You played high school tennis as a seventh grader?
That's right. Seventh, eighth.
I know you could do that some places, but I forgot this. You mentioned that we were talking yesterday. You had to pass a physical exam.
That's right. And you were not gonna, on your watch, you weren't gonna let me not pass that. So you would.
What were some of the things you had to do?
It was you had to do 20 pull-ups, run 1.5 miles in a certain amount of time. I mean, those are the two main things that you focused in on. And so each day or each week, you would make sure that I would be prepared for that test. And I had about probably 6 months to prepare for it.
I was there for 2 years. And my kids, it was not by design. I was taking them skating all the time. That was by design. Put knee pads on, elbow pads on, a helmet on. It's a great way to teach a young kid athleticism, just throw them out on the ice.
Yeah, you took me over there to watch them, I remember.
But they got it really into ice hockey, so I went up to Toronto. So again, just around the lake. I remember you coming up several times. I remember your brother coming up when he was on holiday from Ohio State. I won't mention the player's name, but he played at a school in the Midwest. He was ranked 77 in the NCAA. It's very easy to remember. So Wurtzman. So Mark's older brother beats this player in a practice match. And we had plenty of court time. It was a holiday break. And, he was scheduled to come back the next day, but he was so disgruntled and upset. He didn't know if he was coming back. So I just remember walking by and go, hey, come back tomorrow and you can play Wurtzman. So I knew he'd be there. And that was a huge win where Jeremy's in the 7th grade and he beats the guy who's ranked 77 in the NCAA. But Jeremy was winning before he changed his strokes. That I would say he had the it thing. He could tell you otherwise where he was, maybe too tight, maybe too this, too that. But why do you think that you started winning so early? You were winning with strokes and you're winning without strokes.
Yeah, I think before, at a young age, I loved competing, just loved playing tournaments. And there weren't a ton of tournaments to play, but I would level 2s, level 3s. I mean, I know it's changed a lot with how they do it, but anything that I could get in, I loved to play. And just would all week would be thinking about the tournaments on the weekends and the draws and who you're going to play. And And it meant so much to me to do well in those tournaments. And then on top of that, I think watching my brother play in all these big tournaments, going to Kalamazoo as a 7-year-old, or going to Shreveport, Louisiana, where they used to have the nationals when he was, 14, coming down here to Fort Lauderdale. I remember San Antonio, Texas, watching him play John Roddick and all these players. And, you grow up around it and you want it for yourself. And so, yeah, I just think I was around the game so much that and would observe so much that it was easy for me to go out and compete and want to do well.
So when Mark went off to college, what year were you in school?
I was
sixth grade, maybe?
Yeah, I think I was just going into 6th grade. Yep.
But Rochester and Columbus are not that far apart, so you saw probably quite a few college tennis matches.
Yeah, and that was one of the draws, and that's always been a draw to Ohio State, is that, New York doesn't have really a state school for men's tennis, and besides the Ivy Leagues. And so it's probably the closest school to Columbus, or Columbus is probably one of the closest schools to where we live, about a little under 6 hours. So we were able to go watch them compete, which was always, it was entertaining to say the least, but sometimes I'd be pretty embarrassed, but it was still fun to watch the Buckeyes back then.
All the SUNY schools, that's based on the population of New York, and obviously New York State because of New York City. I went to SUNY at Oswego on Lake Ontario. And then when I became years and years later the director of tennis at Midtown Tennis, I found out how weak the level of play was with the SUNY schools. I can't remember what there was a SUNY school that rented courts. Closest was Oneonta? No.
Yeah, it would have been Oneonta.
My
Court? No, I'm not sure.
Geneseo, maybe?
Yes, SUNY Geneseo. Yeah.
And so the level of play, this was again a long time ago. With, but like say Ohio State University, that doesn't really exist in New York State.
Right.
Where they have like a really big football school.
Yeah. I mean, they have Columbia, Cornell, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
Syracuse, probably the biggest, but they don't have men's tennis. Syracuse University.
Yeah, that's another subject in itself. Where now in the Big Ten, tell us about teams that have been dropped.
Yeah, unfortunately, Iowa, Minnesota, both were dropped during the pandemic, and that took a big hit. And then we added Maryland and Rutgers, but neither of them have men's tennis. So there's 4 teams now in the Big Ten that don't have men's tennis. So yeah, it's unfortunate, but you do what you can to continue to compete and thrive at IU, and yeah, you just hope that it eventually will you'll get over some of these tough times.
Well, your career, other than being at Denver, Ohio State as a player and a coach, then Michigan, and now Indiana. I think that's something that really helps kids in the Midwest. They just know sports because they know Big Ten sports.
Right. Yeah. It's huge.
But what happened, I remember, so I spent a lot of time with you for 3 years. And then you needed to seek an environment with more competition. And then you ended up going to Florida Tennis Academy. You worked with Billy Stearns. And I know there's a lot of positives of that because I remember having kids in his tournaments or his site where they had a lot of tournaments. And he definitely was a worker. He definitely ran intense practices. There was an ad I remember in Tennis Magazine with you, there's a picture of you and Billy. I think at that time you had 6 gold balls. And I think the slogan was, you have to manage talent. But what was it like to, upstate New York, going to regular school, living with your family? How old were you? Was it grade 9, grade 10?
Yeah, so when you went to Toronto, I went up there. I believe we went up quite a bit, and then it just became pretty difficult. And decided to look for another opportunity. So it was my sophomore year of high school, second semester, January. So I was probably just turned 16 in December, and headed down to Billy Stearns in Sarasota, Florida. And yeah, I mean, some of the positives were he was on the court 6 to 6. He'd get there at 6 a.m., he'd leave at 6 p.m., and he'd be there the next morning, ready to go at 6 a.m.
Did he take a day off?
He would take Sunday off, but other than that, there wasn't much days off. And I was fortunate enough because I learned such great fundamentals. And when I got down there, there's a lot of days, especially in the summer, that I'd be going 6 a.m. to noon, and we'd master the cross court hitting and hitting on clay, hitting topspin, just hitting a lot of balls. And yeah, I mean, I definitely learned what it was like to put a full day of training in the heat. And
I remember the times I observed him, most of the time he was giving privates. Was that the case?
Yeah. So there was an academy, and then he had his privates. And a lot of times I was out there because I hit the ball decently. I'd be out there, hitting in the privates and things like this. So yeah, there'd be about 10 courts going on with different coaches, and then he'd have his court that was all private lessons, and he'd fill it. Yeah.
But you were a scholarship player. I
Yeah.
remember there was, like there always is. There's a few things. I'm going to guess that under our watch, we wanted to have you have a circular swing on the back end, and he wanted to have you take it straight back.
Yeah, it was definitely a lower tape back. Yes.
His son, is it BJ Stearns?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't really know him, but I know he runs an academy in Hilton Head. But he played doubles with a kid I coached, Clayton Stanley. I think BJ grew up in Texas.
Yeah, and then they moved to Florida. But I think you're right. Or he went to no. He went to University of Texas. And
He went
there.
to Texas. Okay.
Yeah. But I think he grew up in Florida.
Okay, but they played together in the 12s.
Yeah.
But when your dad was, I'm sure your mom too, but I remember just talking to your dad where obviously they're both talking about it. Big thing to send their young kid away to school. And I made a list. I remember your dad. I called Vic Braden up. I called Dennis Vandermeer and just a few others and said, hey, would you talk to this gentleman about advice for his son? He's in an environment where there's just not that much competition. But one person I called, a former student who he used to come to Rochester for Christmas, Greg Tiley. You would be the Santa Claus.
That's right.
And we had the outfit, and he was a great Santa Claus.
Hit with Santa.
But what he told your dad was just stay at home and keep working on fundamentals. And then he said, you should have your son join some special fitness groups like running, karate. And as he gets older, definitely, lock him in the gym and make him lift weights. And then spend your money on, going to tournaments. You're living and working in the Midwest. The Midwest produced better players with the old system where kids stayed at home. What are your thoughts on academies overall? I mean, you recruit, you travel to academies.
Yeah, that's a tough question. I would say that a lot of kids can get lost in academies, just a lot of aimlessly hitting. At the time, as I said, I when I was at the academy, it was I already had results. I already had a great base. I could hold my own, and so the training and just being around other great hitters was great. But to really develop, it probably isn't the best environment.
Yeah, I think academies, there should be, we talk about on these podcasts all the time, there should be pre-academies.
Yeah.
Get your game down, and certainly you need competition.
Right, yeah.
But that's where you met your wife, Gretchen. She was the same academy, childhood sweetheart. So you were knew her from what, 14, 15 years old?
Well, yeah, I was 16. We both were 16. So yeah, I don't think I'd send my kids to an academy.
What, from a technical standpoint, with your wife, how did it work out for her? You said that you really had fundamentals down. Did she have fundamentals down?
Yeah, I mean, Billy actually helped her a ton with her grip. So she got there, and coming from Erie, Pennsylvania, didn't really have much severe Western grip. And she had the same grip on the forehand backhand, and Billy did. I mean, if you were willing to take lessons from him, he would spend he put the hours, he put the time in, the hard work in. So he changed all her grips, and she honestly would not have gotten to be a Division I athlete as a tennis player if he didn't help her change her grips and that. But at the same time, I think, you master the cross courts, you master the cross court down the lines, and yeah, I think that was the major positives that he had on her game.
When I think of Purdue, I think of Leroy Keys. At one point, he was arguably the best football player in college football. But also, the Boilermakers, they produce engineers, correct?
Yes, that's what they're known for.
What did she study there?
She was a political science major.
And she worked for Babolat for a long time.
Yeah, so she moved out to Colorado. Just loved the city. She actually worked at CU as the assistant coach right out of college.
What school is that?
CU Boulder.
Colorado
University of Colorado, yeah. And just wanted to live out there, and position opened up, and then Babolat. She then went from there to Babolat, and I was fortunate enough to spend a lot of time out there, and really liked Colorado. So.
And then you spent time coaching there.
Yeah, so then one of my closest friends, Danny Westerman, who's now the head coach at Wisconsin, because my brother actually coached at Wisconsin as an assistant coach and coached him. And he got the head coach at Denver, and I was out there with Gretchen and then became his assistant. And that's what got me into college coaching.
But to back up on that a little bit, so you go to Florida, you're at an academy, and you end up going to the University of Florida. What about, did you take the 5 visits? Did you see quite a few schools?
I took 4 visits. Florida State, Illinois, Florida, and Ohio State.
So I'm going to guess that Florida State was Dwayne Holquist already there?
His first month. It was him and John Roddick.
And then you had Craig Tyler, who was at Illinois.
Craig Tyler and Bruce Burke was the coaches at Illinois.
And was Andy Jackson? Who was the coach? No,
it was Ian Duvenhagen, and then Damon Hankel, who was a coach at Stearns, not Smith Stearns, Billy Stearns, and Damon was coached by Billy Stearns, and then he had become the assistant coach at Florida, and then Ohio State, Ty was the assistant coach, not the head coach, and John Daly was the head coach.
We'll have to get around to talking about Ty Tucker, the one and only.
That's right.
I think most of our listeners are too young to have seen the TV show Gomer Pyle, but he's Sergeant Carter. He looks like him, sounds like him. I think the USDA needs to call him up and say, we need some of your juice. How did you pick Florida over the other 3?
That's a good question. Damon was, a close friend of mine, or someone that I trusted. It was right down the street from Sarasota, where I was. I would say the biggest draw at the time, I probably shouldn't even be saying this, but it was probably outdoor tennis, SEC. Jeff Morrison was number 1 in the country, had won a national title. They were title hunting that year. Morrison, Overholser, Justin O'Neill, the list of players. It was a very, very strong team. So there was just a lot of positives going on at that time, and what an amazing school and tennis facility was incredible.
Yeah, I spent, as you know, 15 years in Tampa. We used to go up on a regular basis to show players the University of Florida, watch a college match. I took a young player from Dusseldorf one time, and I said, hey, he came over to spend some time. I coached this kid for several years, and I said, we're going to a small city with a big university, and we're going to check out their football stadium. It's going to be bigger than any stadium in Dusseldorf. And the Swamp, I think they're still doing it, but for years you could just the stadium's open and people are walking stairs. And
Yeah.
but we've had Matt Clore, who you know really well, and Scotty Perelman. They've been guests on our podcast. So you're there for a year, then you transferred. We could ask you about transferring today. So many kids, I don't really think that's a good thing. What's it called? The kids that they can get mad at their coach and just go home and they.
The transfer portal.
There you go.
Yeah, you can just go right on. You don't need a.
One hiccup and you get upset with a coach and you let the world know you want to leave, right?
That's right.
Or do you think that's good or bad?
I don't. I think it's too much freedom. There needs to go back to what it was, but I don't think it is.
And obviously there's probably a long list of reasons to transfer, but why did you transfer from Florida to Ohio State?
Well, yeah, Ian was no longer going to be the coach at Florida. And, we were always close with the Ohio State program and Ty. And like I'd said, when I went on the visit, Ty was only the assistant coach. When I was transferring, he had signed on as the head coach. So that was definitely a big draw. My parents, who were always very, they were always involved in my tennis and very wanted to watch matches and come to the home matches. They only were able to. They both were working at the time. They were only able to make it to Florida one time for 2 matches, and so they, I think they were really wanting me to a bit closer. Gretchen was also at Purdue, which was only a few hour drive from Columbus. So I think there was just a mix of things, and we believed in Ty and what he was going to be doing as a program, and there was wanted to kind of help build something to what it kind of became, what it is today.
Yeah, it's amazing. We talk about that where I don't know what the record was for so many matches, 1 in a row, and
yeah,
rightfully so. Now there's a tennis complex with his name on it.
Yeah.
My son Connor did the same. He transferred from a Florida school, Florida State, to Ohio State. And when I would go watch Ohio State play, Connor was a little shocked that I would always be with the team. And I didn't know anything different, but because I'm a coach, Ty said, "Let's go." I was at the dinner table with the team, and I was at the meetings, and so I got to know the associate AD at that time. I just remember his first name was Chris.
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, when you hired Ty Tucker, he was a little bit young, so a lot of times you have to take several steps to become a head coach at one of these big-time schools." Now, John Daly I found out that he resigned early so Ty could be the interim.
During the year.
During the year.
Yeah.
During the year. So then the gentleman, the associate athletic director, Chris, should be able to tell his last name, but he said Ty Tucker had the best line ever. And the committee asked him, "If you don't get the job at Ohio State as the men's tennis coach, what are you going to do?" He said, "I'm going to mow lawns for Ohio State." And he said, "No matter what happens, I'm going to work for Ohio State." And I guess, he left the room and people looked left and right and said, he's the guy. Because he was pretty young, right?
He was late 20s.
Yeah.
Looking back, it's unbelievable.
No, that now having the years gone by where my son played there. I don't know if he had gone straight to Ohio State, if he would have been ready for the intensity. I've pushed the pedal to the metal and showed my son some intensity, but no, and I think that it's a negative that with I think a lot of kids today hear that the coach is really driven and competitive, and people go, "Oh, I don't know if I like that." It's just the opposite. I want to go where they're winning.
Yeah, and at the time, when everyone was like, "You're crazy! You're leaving Florida. You're going to go to Ohio State." It just hadn't blown up yet. Now, it's everyone left and right wants to go to Ohio State. So, yeah, it's interesting to see how it changes.
My son Connor, and I know Florida State under Dwayne Holquist, they've had better years, but when he was there, they barely made the tournament Meaning, what, 64
That's it.
teams or 32 teams? How's
It's
it?
64, but it's not always the top 64 because it's the same as, like the basketball tournament where you get automatic bids and things like this. So you got to be about 42 in the country.
Yeah. I think the draw or the announcements are made on ESPN radio or
Yeah.
something. It's public. And Connor said the guys are jumping up and down. And there was other reasons, but he said, as long as I play 6, I want to go to a place where they have a chance to win the tournament. In the 2 years he was at Ohio State, you basically have 2 chances. You have the indoor and you have the outdoor. So he was in 3 out of 4 Final Fours in just 2 years at Ohio State.
And they won the indoors, right?
No, not when he was there.
Okay.
Now let's go back to that. There's circle back. So you were coaching. That's when Chase Buchanan was a freshman, right?
So he came in March. At the time, you could come in on the quarter system.
Yeah.
And, to say that he was around, though, I mean, being from Columbus and, Ty had known him from a young age. And, really, I'd known him since my playing days at Ohio State. So it wasn't as if he just showed up. But, yeah, he started school in March.
I was at Kalamazoo when Chase Buchanan won the 18s. And my son Connor, he was not playing the backdraw because he didn't want to play the backdraw. So many kids will do that. He went to Florida State this summer before he started his freshman year. And he really hadn't played much tennis.
Yeah.
And he pulled his stomach muscle. And I said, hey, let's just stay here and watch tennis by the time we change flights and what have you. And so Ty would come and sit with me, and we were watching Buchanan play, and he wins it. And Ty drove every day from Columbus, every day. Just like when he goes to New York City for the Junior US Open or to recruit, he will sometimes fly or not all. He flies back to
every
Columbus
day, yeah.
because he figured out that the flight's cheaper than staying in a hotel. But with Ty, I remember, so this Buchanan wins the trophy, and Ty goes, see ya. And he didn't stay for the trophy ceremony. He was just there for the match. Coach's coach. With post-college, you didn't play very long.
No.
How long did you play?
18 months, probably.
18 months.
Yeah.
I remember you saying, because I've always tried to get people to go play in Europe where you're not playing for points. And I remember you saying that you wish you had done that. Could you comment on that?
Would have loved to. Yeah, that's something I majorly regret. 2 things I regret. One is not going over and playing German club tennis. I think that environment's great. I loved college tennis. I still do. And just being on a team and being part of that. You were really pushing me to go over to Europe to play on the dirt and also to just play money tournaments and just have different experiences. I was just going to U.S. Challengers, U.S. Futures, Mexico. I wasn't really going out of my comfort zone as much and really getting to know different cultures and people. And I think that would have helped me today, just with relationships and meeting more people. Secondly, I gave up on doubles, and that's something that you see today. I maybe could still be out there, possibly playing. So I wish I would have given doubles a real shot.
Say the same thing about my son Connor. With like yourself, has the ball striking skills, can play from the service line. And people will tell Connor, "You're a really great doubles player." He goes, "Well, not really. I just know where to stand."
Yeah.
And it's getting worse and worse. I always say you could improve that answer. Say, "I know where to stand. I know how to hang onto the racket." They see people with a Western grip in the ready position, and you just know at best they're going to be playing some swing volleys. It's just we could talk about college doubles for sure. But here's Ohio State story for you. Peter Kobelt came to spend time with my son over Christmas break. And actually, one of the players that you watched at the Battle of Boca, Tal Goodman, he was in the room. He's 9. He was at the time. Now he's 19. He's at the University of Pennsylvania. And he hits the ball very well. So Richard Hernandez organized it. Tennis Ontario sent me this quite a large group, maybe 10-year-olds. And Kobelt wanted to be filmed in the worst way. And I'm like, no, you don't want to do this. No, I want to do it. So we filmed his tennis game. But what happened is Kobelt, people will go through us for context on where to stay. So he was up in Toronto, and Carlo Lavosi has done really well financially. Somebody I helped become a tennis teacher. So sight unseen, no, that's wrong. It was sight unseen with Vicky Duval, another story, but because he had never seen her play. I just said, here's somebody that you should sponsor. But with Peter, he said, and there's no strings attached. It was just, I think it was $80,000 for the player, 80,000 for expenses, 80,000 for the coach. Now, would you have died for that or what? Just totally died for it. I mean, I know the group before you with the USTA, seemed like they spent millions on that group, and then you came along, they weren't spending money, so it's always been a little bit inconsistent. So with Cobalt and David Cass, who's from Columbus and loves tennis, he told me later that Cobalt should have gone, and Ty told Cobalt that he should have done what I recommended. So I recommended he finish at Ohio State. And here's a guy who's in the doubles final. He was number one. Yeah. So he has a pretty impressive bio. I said, no, what you need to do, and telling his father as a teaching pro, I said, no, what we would do with him first is he has to come here for at least 3 months and just work on technique. And then what you're going to do is we're going to send him to Europe and just play on clay and not even play where he's playing for ATP points. And I think the hype is, we've had Rob Krychek, we get Austin Krychek on our podcast, where at Bollettieri's for the longest time, the kids that are there, they weren't playing on clay. They had clay, but they weren't right. Playing on clay. So I do think going to play club tennis or just going over to play in the French system, which the UTR is based on. Because when kids are traveling around playing futures, it's not like there's a cluster. Sometimes you have to just travel.
Right.
I think in family we work with, they're in Belgium right now, and maybe that's changed. But in Belgium they had, I'm just pulling a number out of the hat, like 10 futures. In Spain at one time they had 50 out of 52 weeks.
Yeah, that's incredible.
But the war of financial attrition, was that the main reason that you stopped?
I can't say that was the main reason. Yeah, I would say that I just wasn't progressing, the way that I wanted to. I started to play challengers and tournaments that were maybe a few ATP qualifying events, and just wasn't really getting anywhere. And just unfortunately decided to stop. But really, I'd say I could have probably given more. I wasn't injured at all, maybe mentally injured, but not physically. But you look back and you probably wish you would have given a little bit more, and definitely doubles.
People used to say, experts in tennis, so-called experts, have to give it 3 years minimum.
Yeah.
Now I think people are saying 4. But you got 375 in singles. Looking back at that, now you should realize that that's a good climb for 18 months. 210 in doubles.
I started probably in July, so I finished up school in May, and then started in July, and probably was out there until the following. I didn't play very long. Yeah, is the point I'm getting at. Yeah.
No, I think of my son Connor, where you even talk to him about, well, you probably put this together where you could be a player coach, play doubles. I think of Mike and Bob Bryan. Bob Bryan, he won all 3, right? He stayed in tennis for 3 years, or at Stanford for 3 years.
Yeah, I mean they won 4 in a row, and he must have been on 3 of those teams. Yeah.
But I believe it was his 3rd year. We have a fact checker out there. Look this up for us and give me a hard time if I'm wrong. But he won singles, doubles, and team. Bob.
Yeah.
And they went. He sacrificed his career in singles, and they just became doubles players. The way it works, you see these guys 39, 40 years old, and Roger Federer is opposed to this, that you keep doubling the points. So Roger's saying, well, if you get to the quarters, you've had a great tournament. You get to the semis, you double it. You get to the finals, you double it. You win the finals, you double it. Plus you're doubling sometimes the money. So people can, not really have a great year, but have 2 great tournaments, and they still get to go to the big dance. So it's very difficult to break in.
Yeah.
Eric Buterak, he really helped Raven Klaassen out. They got off to a great run. Second tournament maybe. They got to the finals, the Australian Open. They didn't do very well after that, but Raven didn't have the points
To get in.
to get in doubles tournament, especially when a Grand Slam, the draws are bigger. You have more teams get in.
Right.
With you played mostly with Brian Wilson or played with lots of people?
I actually played a lot with Nick Monroe, and some with Brian Wilson, yeah. And then, every tournament a lot of times it's just who you can find, who you're playing. I didn't take it serious enough that I was out there playing doubles, but I was having so much success, and it was keeping me going because, you lose on a Tuesday or Wednesday, but you're in the finals of doubles on Sunday. At least you're getting matches throughout the week, and then you go on to the next tournament where a lot of these guys were just, waiting around and doing God knows what until the next week starts. So
I know Connor, and it might just been at the future level. I don't think it was the challenger level, but he won 3 doubles tournaments in a row with 3 different partners.
Yeah, that's what it felt like.
And
yeah.
I think another thing that makes it so difficult is you're trying to qualify for singles. So if you do really well in the doubles, you're going to miss the qualifier.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so sometimes you would either play a team that was wanting to get onto the qualifiers and just, they'd give you the match, or sometimes you'd have to do that so you could go on and try to get the singles points.
I read this on your team's webpage. Yeah, you won 9 doubles titles and got to 3 finals. Who's still out there that you played against? Like Rahm was still out there. You had win over Rahm, win over Isner. Who's not only who did you have wins over that is still out there, but
I think
who's out there that you?
Yeah, I mean, there's still.
Of course, you're 40 now, right?
Yeah, so it's getting tougher. But Nick Monroe, I think he's still out there playing. I mentioned him.
You got to respect him. He's very fit.
Yeah.
He could be a much better ball striker, but he certainly knows the game of doubles when you watch him play.
Yeah, absolutely. No, he's put in his time. Such a competitor, such a hard worker. I played Isner. I played, who else did we say? Ram. Yeah, there's not much more. Jamie Ceratoni, he was my age. I know that he's been with Cressy quite a bit and with the GreatBase. We grew up playing each other ever since we were in the 12, so that would be one additional player.
It's amazing. He's a competitor. I mean, it would have been great for him if he went through what you did with strokes.
Yeah.
It's amazing. He's a gamer.
Yeah.
And you got to respect that. It's like Will Chamberlain. He won 11 championships out of 13 years. So how's it go? Yeah, you got 10 fingers. He's got 11 rings. People should look at this guy on YouTube, and if he's, it's just like a given. Michael Jordan's the best. And I don't really like to get into those conversations, who's the best, but wow, Bill Russell.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
So you must know Rye Tarpley.
Yes. So Rye Tarpley is my brother's age.
Oh, okay.
And funny story about Rye Tarpley, we were talking about growing up at these tournaments. So we were in San Antonio, Texas for the boys 14 hard courts. And my brother, so I was probably 7, 8 years old, or no, maybe even younger. And Rye Tarpley fell out of a tree and broke his arm at the tournament and had a default out of the tournament. I'm sure he remembers that. And I'll never forget that because my mom would always use it against me not to climb the tree. But anyways, I would watch my brother. I'd come watch my brother play at Ohio State, and Rye would be playing at Northwestern, being both in the Big Ten.
Rye Tarpley came to work with me from Boston, long, lean, lefty, athletic. I mean, good enough, obviously, to go to Northwestern on a scholarship.
Yeah. So
somehow he ends up in my place, and I said, how would you like to be the best 35 and over player in the country? I think at that time he was 25. Easygoing guy, but it was not what he wanted to hear. And he was too busy with work. He wasn't playing tournaments at 35, but at 40, recently he became ranked number 1 in the U.S.
Wow.
He actually sent me an email not long ago, and I tell people power versus control, you're best to take your bottom part of your hand and have it be even with the bottom part of the racket. Don't take your hand off the racket. And if you look at most pros, they have their hand off the racket.
Yeah.
But it's not a major power source. Certainly, you get that feeling of being loose and whippy, more racket speed. Oh, it could be a longer lever. The real power source is, ground reaction force. The kinetic chain up through the ground, racket speed falling, the lever way out away from your body. You just keeping your head still. If it's a forehand, stopping your left side, not pulling it open like you're throwing the discus.
Yeah.
But he sent me an email and said, I changed my grip, and it's just amazing how much better I'm hitting the ball.
He had a severe Western, is that right?
Yeah, no, I can remember having him play mini tennis against kids. And we had Alex Vukovic on, who played at Princeton, and Thomas Ollerstedt came by. Somebody had trained him to play and teach tennis. And I told Vukovic, and it wasn't really gamemanship, this guy is going to beat you like the bongos. What we're going to do is take a foot and a half, I think it was, might have been a foot off each side, from the perimeter of the sidelines. And then now instead of a 27-foot court, we're going to have a 20-foot court, and you're going to lose.
Yeah.
You're going to lose. It's kind of like when kids play. It's really unfortunate. That's where we come back to our skill testing is when brawn plays brain, brawn's going to win. So you've got a 16-year-old playing a 12-year-old, and the 16-year-old wins. But then the 12-year has much better skills. So that's where we say winning's not confusing, it's totally confusing. Coming back to Midtown, different names. Chad Riley. Chad Riley, his father was a very successful plastic surgeon, and he went to UNC, and Chad wanted to go to UNC. So he had a legacy, but he didn't get in. And I said, well, you can get in, just go to another school, do really well academically, then you can transfer. And he did. He went to TCU, then he transferred to UNC. But he's somebody that, I could just go through many different examples. This Midtown Tennis Club had 3 houses. And I said, the only way for me, my former wife, she needs to be patted on the back for this. She never saw the inside of the house. I said, the only way for me to get on top of this with 25 pros is I got to live across the street. I got to have to, police. You have to have grip police, swing police, group dynamic police, court time police. But with that, I've got some names here. Chad Riley, he's how much older than you?
Yeah, probably 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. So anyway, that was a win-win where, we had just a small group. We took one of those houses, and we had a mom, Seth Rose, who he had a major growth spurt. He ended up becoming an All-American. He, like yourself, is in the South Carolina Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
But Chad would have been beating you, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I never beat Chad.
Okay.
Yeah. We played high school. He went to McQuaid, which is a Jesuit school. I went to Brighton, and he was able to play right away. He beat me in the finals of our sectional tournament, and then when we played McQuaid as well. So, and I don't believe I ever beat him in practice. He could run. He was so fast. Get to every ball. One-handed backhand, I believe, but
right.
So fast, and just could never get over that hump. So Seth, on the other hand, I think I owned. So that was good. But we were the same age.
But he had his growth spurt later.
Yeah.
But still, you did so much better on, with your career as a player was more advanced than Chad's. But you don't need to have a big academy, but it's good to bring in the sandwich effect. So you're working with the competition behind, and we're working with the competition ahead. I'm always trying to tell young kids that, they're say, well, you two will be in the college at the same time. Yeah. And they're like, so it's some kid who's in the 18s, so you take 2 years in the 18s, 2 years in the 16s, last year in the 14s, you're all going to be in college at the same time. I don't think parents stop and think that their kid is, they're going to be 18 and competing against a 23-year-old. But, yeah, so Chad came and lived with us. I forgot that he went to high school.
Yeah.
Because that was really before homeschool.
Right. There's no homeschool.
Right.
There's no online school. I mean, we didn't even have computers. It was a whole different world. And I believe my parents really helped out because you couldn't go to Brighton because they didn't pay taxes, and the city schools weren't great where you guys were living. So I think we got them set up, or helped get set up, at McQuaid, which was an all-boys school.
Yeah, I remember that. He had dropping him off with his coat and tie.
Yeah.
With, he was on ESPN one time working with Jim Lair, and I remember telling Craig Tiley, because Chad was really good, but he'd get tight.
Yeah.
He was so super and so many ways. I mean, but he played in the lineup his whole time at UNC, so he's a good tennis player for sure. But Chad, and he hit the ball really well.
Yeah.
But sometimes I see people just got to get their wires together. I think of someone who's similar was a girl helped you with running. She was helping you. She's a female helping you with running intervals. Megan Broderick.
Okay. Yeah.
But she's from a running family. But with Chad, I remember telling Tyler, this guy may not make your lineup, but he will be the best in the gym and the best on the track. He's going to show up and he's going to be able to run 4:30 mile. And, he didn't need a scholarship either. So Tyler was like, he wanted to have Chad.
Oh, yeah.
So you mentioned Seth. Seth's mother came and she was there. She was the mom at one of the houses. It was just one house for juniors, and that allowed us to have visiting players. So it was small, but we brought people in. I'm thinking of so many names. I wrote down, the game of 21, write down 21 names.
Yeah.
And that's a great way to go back and jog your memory about, what was going on. But I remember Jasmine Chowdhury, I was running Seguzo Bassett, and she was at an academy. It was just right around the corner. So all of a sudden, the taxi pulls up, and she gets out with her parents, or she got out with her father. And I remember him just saying, "I hope this place is better." And she used to come back and forth. But then a Russian girl she got British citizenship, and then all of a sudden, she was knocked down to number 2. And then, by being knocked down to number 2, then she didn't get into some really special team events. I've got some of these names down here, but one is Scott Lipsky.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Scott, I know you guys worked on doubles with us quite a bit.
Yes.
And then I made a videotape for him. Now, his father, who passed away at a young age. Remember his father, smart guy. This was at your bar mitzvah.
Yeah.
And so you would have been 13, right?
Yeah.
So his father said to me, I watched that tape at least 3 times. And I'm going to watch it 3 more, whatever he said. And he said, but I'm going to work on the changes with him. He goes, I'm not going to share it with the coaches. And very smart, because most of the time when you share the tape with a coach, it becomes an ego struggle.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, well, you should have the strings go out to the target longer. I disagree. Tell us about Lipsky. I mean, you guys won one Kalamazoo, 2 Kalamazoos?
Yeah, we won quite a bit. We won 2 Kalamazoos together. He was an amazing competitor. He was always better than I was. I think I got my first win over him, not in the 16s, but up until then, he was always number 1. And I was able to catch him a little bit, and then he really took off in the 18s, and he made finals at Kalamazoo, and he was just always, top 3-5 in the country, and I was kind of like one tier below him. But doubles, we played all through the juniors. We won clay courts and hard courts in the 14s. We won clays in the 16s, Kalamazoo twice, and then we even won in the 18s as well. So it was, we always had success together. So you look back, and when you win that much, with one partner, there's always great memories.
When you won the 18s, was that entry into the US Open?
So we did not win Kalamazoo in the 18s. We won clay courts in the 18s.
Clay courts, okay.
Yeah. And we got to play in the Junior US Open 3 times. And our first year 16s, we won. So we were 14 years old, and we won our first round, which was incredible. We have to look at that. and then we lost in the quarters. But in the 18s, yeah, he got injured going into Stanford. He had a knee injury, and we didn't get to play the final Kalamazoo. So, yeah, it's too bad.
What was the name? He's from Oklahoma. He's got a brother who's really good. His brother went to Illinois. He played at Stanford.
So it was Martin and Lipsky and Martin. David Martin.
David Martin, yeah.
Chris Martin was the one that played Illinois. He actually won the final match when they won the national
championship.
championship.
He was very much a baseliner.
Chris
Martin, and then to win the final match out against Vanderbilt, some key points right at the very end. I think maybe in the championship point came to the net.
Yeah, and David was a lefty, real strong. Lipsky and Martin, yeah, they won. They might have played. They could have played Davis Cup. I'd have to look that up as well.
Doug McCurdy, you traveled with him at one point?
Yeah, so Doug McCurdy took us over to China to play against the Chinese, the best players in China as an ITA summer team. And we spent 2 weeks over there and traveled around. And it was a real unique experience for us.
With Doug, for the longest time he worked with the ITF. And at one time he was in charge of player development with the USTA. And an interesting approach, he pretty much, and there's a lot of positives to this, like just give the money to the families. I think that's something, certainly everything would be political to a certain extent, but just cut out all the fat salaries and give money to the players. Wayne Bryan, I think people forget about the letter that he wrote. But with that, wasn't that a reason that you and Lipsky got split up? Like you're only 7 in the country, and you didn't get sent to Europe?
Yeah, so Scott started traveling to Europe and was on the national team, or what they had. They kind of got away from the national team, but they selected a few of the best and went over and traveled overseas. And so at the bigger tournaments like the Orange Bowl, the Eddie Herr, I wasn't able to play with Scott. They kind of told him who he was going to play with and gave him a partner for those tournaments. But for the nationals, we were going to play. But again, he got a knee injury that last summer.
This is something for our fact checker. Bill Self from Oklahoma. The Martin boys are from Oklahoma. Like you going to Ohio State and trying to help build something. Chris Martin was on the way to Stanford like his older brother, but Bill Self helped out Craig Tiley because at that time Bill Self was the coach at the University of Illinois.
Wow. And
said, well, why don't you come here and be part of the legacy? They want to win this, and you go to Stanford. It's like not going to be all that unique because I don't know how many they were at that time, but Dick Gould won 17. If you can imagine, Dick Gould for the longest time he didn't even recruit. He just the top 1 or 2 kids were going to just automatically go to Stanford. But it's interesting, the story of circumstance where he ended up winning that last match out. Ryler DeHart, who ended up winning 30 matches as a freshman, he didn't play, I believe, the quarters, semis, and finals because he's more of a shot maker. And it's the same thing in every sport. Like this hockey player from Montreal, he's been traded from Montreal. He didn't play at the Olympics because the Olympics are one-shot deal. Yeah. It's not best of 7. And he was too offensive a player. Like the defense wins. We want people to go forward, but we don't want people who are just going to be making mistakes all over the place.
Yeah, looking back at that Illinois team, interesting thing is I was just thinking about this. They had their top 5 all had one-handed backhands, and then Ryler had a one-handed backhand. So it could have been all 6 having a one-handed backhand winning that title.
Well, Tiley, that's interesting. Yeah. With you can talk more about Ty Tucker, but with the USTA, so we certainly know firsthand what Tiley was doing in Illinois, to make an understatement. But he had spent 7 years with us prior to that. But I tell you, if they took the coaching from Ty Tucker and took the teaching from Craig Tiley, that basically should be the USTA Player Development Program.
Yeah, we'd have some winners.
It also too then gets into working with kids when they're really, really young. It's so difficult. Someone's 15, 16 years old and they come to you, and it's not that they have a Western grip, but the butt cap of their racket is almost hitting their earlobe. The contact points, even with their shoulder. Here's something to test you on. Maybe that's the wrong verb. The one court. Tell us about the one court that I believe it was like $60,000-$70,000. That's where people should keep a journal. Like how much money, they said, okay, Steve, we're taking a tennis court away. Tennis court's 120 by 60.
I got you.
But they're going to give you, they took 40 by 60 to basically just have cycling classes. Like all bicycles in this 40 by 60. But they gave me so I had 80 by 60. And then, and it cost a lot of money. And then a year later, they took the whole court. But from your memory, you're just a young kid. What do you remember from that court?
Yeah, so that was at Midtown.
Yeah.
But it was the hitting lanes. And, we had ball machines and nets that were divided. And I believe there were, I want to say 5. Could have been more. I don't know.
There's 3.
There's only 3. Okay, I was off. So that I lost. I failed the test. But
you can still get a B.
So and that would be one of the stations. We would have different courts going on. A lot of the drills that circle forehand volleys, circle backhand volleys, all the drills that we see with all the content, and then you'd go through the hitting lanes, and we would work on you could hit every shot, and you only had this narrow area to hit into, so you really couldn't be swinging across your body or taking these huge backswings because you really only had a small area of the court to hit into. So it was a great way to hit on the ball machine.
I think around the country, tennis teachers should be trying to put together an old warehouse, make tennis much less costly.
Yeah, but it's like batting cages. That's what it felt like. Yeah.
A few things I remember talking to Vic Braden, and we put up a plaque that said, in appreciation for Vic Braden's design. We didn't have Vic Braden lanes, but they're very similar. I remember the general manager, bright guy, went to Colgate, Steve Gallagher. He bought 3 souped-up ball machines, and I didn't need the souped-up ball machines. I said, no, I just need balls that just pop out very slow. And he bought like 3 $5,000 machines.
Right? Yeah.
And Doug Cash was not a happy camper. But we had a classroom. Mm-hmm. And then above the classroom, we had a storage room. And we were doing so much with VHS. This was just a little before Kodak should have gone digital. So we had basically a place for all these videotapes. So someone like yourself, it'd be Wurtzman Technical, Wurtzman Tactical. Now I see it's much better to be able to do it on a computer, have it be digital, have it be like electronic and saved. But it was mesh, and we could actually open it all up, and it was like a gym floor. So we could do all sorts of fitness. But then we had the 3 hitting lanes, and it was the court dividers, the mesh screens. And at the back of each one, we had, the monitors, the video, the TV on wheels,
yes.
The tripod. So there could be 3 adult lessons going on, three private lessons going on. And it proved to be a moneymaker as well, but not as much of a moneymaker as, let's just knock this thing down again and just go all fitness. I understand now that Midtown Tennis doesn't look anything like it did and I would even guess that maybe your parents would know, but maybe you have to go back even further, that was the fitness, when I showed up, was the fitness center at one time, was at a tennis court? I don't know.
I don't know, I can't tell, yeah.
But, you
could be right.
So I had John Tortorelli, a hockey coach, he's just signed on with another team, Philadelphia Flyers. He was an assistant coach with the Rochester Americans, and I could be in my office and watching these guys work out.
Wow.
A lot of people didn't know that
Yeah.
that the Rochester Americans were working out there.
I followed him. Followed his career.
The Moose, back in the day, there was only 6 NHL hockey teams. So Rochester, some really high-level players played at Rochester because, there's only 6 teams. Now I think there's 32.
Right.
With,
The Amerks, I call them.
yeah, the Scott and Brad Thyroff, their dad Joe, those guys are pretty good tennis players.
Yeah.
How much older are they than you?
Yeah, so they were, again, my brother's ages, so they were quite a bit, 8, 9 years older. I think they were actually older than my brother.
Well, they were good tennis players.
Very good.
In fact, I just made a video for Brad's daughter, young 9-year-old girl.
And Brad, he was
like-
afraid of flying.
Didn't like to fly, yeah.
So he wouldn't go to college because he couldn't play college tennis to fly. Yeah.
But no, he was really good. Actually, he was the hitting partner for, I think, both Serena and Venus.
Yes.
But he only did it in North America.
Yeah, he'd only drive.
Kind of like John Madden, the football coach. The late
Yeah.
football coach, to take the bus.
Yeah.
So that's one thing about Rochester. Even though it's not a hotbed of tennis, there were some very good tennis players in Rochester. One boy, I have his name down here. He won the NCAA doubles. Andy Colombo.
Yes.
Now, I never coached him. I used to talk to Andy, especially I talked to his father all the time. He was constantly in that snack bar. And with Mark Kovacs, a leading tennis educator at Colombo, they won the NCAA doubles. So, but when Colombo, I tell people when he was in the 8th grade, he looked like he could have been a defensive halfback for Syracuse, right down the street. But he didn't get in line. The type of tennis we do it can be very boring and slow, and people look at it and go, "What are they doing?" That comes to my
He
mind.
was with Jeff Wagstaff. Yeah, what's the other name we get?
Jeff Wagstaff. So I went in, and he's a Pied Piper. I show up, and he's in charge of junior tennis. And so I would say, all right, I've got to, they're really, it's corporate. I couldn't believe, for me, at that time, I had traveled and done a lot of clinics and camps in indoor facilities, but I had never worked at an indoor facility. It's a completely different mentality with heated and lighted space. So Jeff, I said, well, Jeff, let me observe what you're doing. And, certainly that first month, but even after that. And when someone, he did competitive fun drills,
Yeah.
live ball,
Everything for
live
Coke.
ball.
You got a
Yeah.
Coke.
And, and he had to go. And
He was a competitor.
And the kids loved it. But I remember I found out that his wife, Grace Wu, was a physics teacher.
And an avid tennis player.
And a nut.
Yeah.
And then she went to Hopman's. They used to call it Hopman's. Now it's called Saddlebrook. And we used to send people on a internship, both in the summer camp, but in the wintertime we would send people down. And I remember Craig Tiley came to be Santa Claus. He showed up for Christmas. So Tiley walks in this building, and this gal goes, I know him. I know him from Saddlebrook. I go, well, he was only there 3 weeks. You must have been there at the right time. And I said, no, he's a product of how we teach tennis. And so we tried to make things go where the people had to be filmed and make that a prerequisite. But yeah, I remember Jeff. He had a business outdoors.
Yeah, they were at Future Stars, and they own that now, out in Penfield maybe, or Pittsford. But he also had a grass court in his backyard.
I remember that.
Yeah.
And he taught tennis so much, and I can identify this as he had bad feet, and he used to wear these huge shoes with like 10 pairs of socks.
I forgot about that.
Because his feet were just killing him. With Wagstaff, but he was into tennis. Is he still going strong? Is he still coaching? So he owns a place?
So they bought that place, and him and Grace played all the age groups. And as far as I know, they're still running strong in Rochester. With
the the pros, when I went to work, the pros are all unhappy. And when I took the job, I said, what's the private lesson cost? And it's pretty simple, man, about $50. I said, okay, what percentage do the pros get? And low is 55, high is 70. I'm going, okay, 70%. At that time, $35 an hour. That's quite a bit. So then when I show up, the lesson was 25. The court was 25. So they're only going to, at the high end, get 70% at $25. So I said, I have nothing to do with compensation packages. So what I did for that first month, I can remember the general manager, Steve Gallagher's, what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm going to talk to him after my first month. The first month, the first meeting is one every week. And the first meeting, all these pros, tell me a little about yourself, da, 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 da. It's pretty easy to kill an hour. So the second week, it's kind of like Patrick McEnroe. When he became general manager of the USTA, he showed up with a yellow pad and said, what do you think we should do? What do you think we should do? Now, I didn't get this idea this was long before Patrick became associated with the USTA. So the next week, I'm writing down, okay, what would you like to see? What would you like to see? And, so the third week had another way to kill time. And then the fourth week, I say, okay, everybody, no lessons. It's going to be like a 3-hour meeting. Yeah. And I said, I think it was 25. And I said, okay, I've just taken 4 things that each of you teach that are wrong. So I'm going to go through a list of 100 things that you teach wrong. And I said, now it's not going to be about earning. It's going to be about learning. Yeah. And I said, if you hang out here and you're with me for a year, 2 years would be better. I said, this should be looked upon as a stepping stone. And I'm confident that I can help you get a bigger and better job with Danny Summers' sister. You remember her name?
Karen.
That was great. She was physically disabled, I remember. She couldn't run very well.
Yeah, it was something with her heel or foot. She had a brace on her heel or something.
And such a nice family. But her mother was so amazed. I said, no, she can train with us. Yeah. So here you are, ranked nationally, whatever. And it's like, no, she can come out. But, certainly we have to, have her be on the technical court or playing 1-box-to-1 box mini tennis.
Yeah.
But the 21 names we could do it where I give you one and you give me one. Actually, Jeff Jagfeld is a general manager at a club. You remember Jeff?
Of course. Yeah.
He actually has
umpire. He was always umpiring our tournaments too.
He has a website or a YouTube page, I guess, where if you want to look at Vic Braden videos, go to Jeff Jagfeld, Geoff, if I'm spelling that right, Jagfeld, wife Jackie. She worked at the Midtown Tennis Club, so their marriage is working. I remember such an easygoing guy, Jeff. As I said, Jeff, maybe 2 minutes in the beginning, 2 minutes at the end. But he was teaching the early childhood development class. I said, no, we teach those young kids to hit the ball. We teach those young kids to hit the ball. And, you were with us just yesterday, and we have a young boy out there, Lincoln. It's like he's already got a really good base.
Yeah,
really good base. Here's a name, Johnny Valenti. What comes to your name in your mind when you're thinking from those days gone by? He's a legend.
Oh yeah, I mean, a lot of stories about Johnny, but a lot of people don't know that. They know him as the stringer, driving around in a van playing futures, and the only one probably making money each week. He's stringing rackets at all the futures year round. But he's from Rochester, New York. Pittsford was one town over, so we grew up, close to their family. And a good story is you're out. I think we were at Pittsford High School, and he tuned me up. I think he beat me like 1-1, and I come off the court, and you let me have it. You didn't hold back, and it was maybe a few months later, maybe December. I think this was the summertime. And in December, I played him again, and you said you're gonna not hit the ball. You're gonna hit the ball up the middle every single ball, and you're gonna go high to his backhand or something like that. You're gonna beat him. And I followed the plan, and then I tuned him up, and I think I remember you charting the match and everything. But yeah, it was he was an amazing competitor, so fast, could really do a lot, but just didn't have the fundamentals as a tennis player.
With money, so yeah, he claims that he's the only person to ever make money at every tournament he went to.
Yep.
Because he strings, lives in a van. I don't know for how many. I'm going to guess 15 years that he was going to futures.
It had to have been. Yeah.
Super fit. Washboard stomach.
Yep.
But he was very, very small when I first was there, and very quick, played basketball. I remember meeting with a dad, and they were cousins to Thyroff.
You're right.
And he all those years later, I can remember my son Connor being like 16 years old and playing against Valenti in doubles. And the people have to understand how the brain works. He hits the backhand the same way, where the racket face is open. And but no, there's so many things that we can go through, and how it's unfortunate that you have to be so persuasive.
Yeah.
Yes, and I don't like that sell. I got to convince you. But that's where people are confused. So he was obviously a little older than you, right?
Yeah, he was quite a bit. Yeah.
But he was just quicker than like a bug on a pond, and he was winning.
He was and he loved to compete. Yeah.
Yeah, but some people are so competitive, they just, it's difficult for them to take steps backwards.
But what a guy to practice with. I mean, in a small town, just to be able to play matches against him at a young age, and he was going to give 100% every time.
Well, another thing too about, and maybe it's the same today, is here in Florida, say Rochester, New York, all the snowbanks, even the adults. Okay, we're going to play every Tuesday for 32 weeks.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not that creative, but we're gonna be able to play every Tuesday. Maybe they play twice a week. So it's like if someone comes to Florida on vacation, they're gonna go to the beach. But if they live here, they're gonna procrastinate and never go to the beach.
Right.
So you guys had walk-on court time. So you guys would hang out. And I remember being in charge of squash. I was the director of racket sports. And when I was asked about squash, I said, I can spell it, but I can't cook it. But what I did, Cornell wasn't so far away, is I hired the Cornell squash coach to be a consultant. And I remember he trained Joe McMahon to teach squash. But squash wasn't very successful in the U.S. early on because there was two courts, the North American and the European, and there's two different balls. So squash didn't...
Hardball and softball.
Yeah, but those squash courts were, a place where we taught. Another thing I did, and it's where I had to really get on people's cases, is that, so there's, like most indoor tennis facilities, there's a huge hallway. Mm-hmm. You got courts on the right, courts on the left. And I was teaching tennis. You guys were in there working on fitness and shadow swinging and, tossing balls. But we had to be ultra quiet.
Yeah.
To get a group of kids to be ultra quiet, there was no charge for that.
Right.
And there was no charge to teach on the squash court. And then I found out the aerobic schedule. They had that huge aerobics room with all those mirrors. Yeah. And so, you guys were coming over, and you were regular schoolers at the time.
Yeah, it wasn't homeschool, yeah.
So you guys would come over on a Saturday and be there all day. But you'd be up but then if a court opened up, you could jump on and play. It's reminds me of my oldest brother. He was a true rink rat. This is before they invented the Zamboni. Or maybe it was where the Potsdam rink, the Clarkson rink, they couldn't afford a Zamboni. They used to use a big metal tub, and it would be steaming hot water in these burlap bags, and people would just push it that was the Zamboni. They had new ice. But the rink rats were scrapers. They would come out, and there'd be like 6-8 of them. They'd skate really fast, and they would scrape the ice in circles. But they would just hang around, watching. It's kind of like with if you want to be a really good ping pong player, table tennis player, you study that, read the book Bounce. People come from where there's less tables.
Yeah.
the best tennis players come from where there's the least amount of court availability. Like basketball, I used to take kids to play basketball where you wait and there's winter's day and you wait. But I would take 3 tennis kids, older kids, and go, okay, guys, we're gonna go play basketball, and they get their turn and they get waxed, and then they sit there and they watch. Say, hey, we're gonna stay here till you get to play twice. You're just gonna take a lesson, but you're gonna see people that are competitive and sandlot sports, no parents, no coaches, all this arguing, and tennis kids need that big time.
Oh yeah.
But no, I think that appreciation of court time. I think people ask why was tennis so good in the Midwest for so many years? You know, family values, the density of population, all these smaller cities like Milwaukee or Toledo or Dayton, Madison. But kids really appreciated court time.
Yeah.
Here in Florida, you know, it's amazing. It's not it's because of the population and there's so many people that come to this part of Florida. But around the country, you see all sorts of empty courts. That's kids all the time. You get an empty court at your house.
Yeah. Now you'd be waiting to see if someone didn't show up, and you'd jump on as quickly as you could. Be a race to get out there just to hit or play a set. We play sets.
Another person who was older than you was very good for you. What a work ethic. He also could have been a little bit more relaxed as Matt Nielsen.
Yeah. Yeah, Matt was a great player. And he
played at Penn State.
And he must have been 4 years older than I was, because I was never in college when he was in college. But what such a nice guy, was always, you know, willing to hit with me, to work with me. We played a ton of sets together, even when I was really, really young.
He was an animal for hard work.
And he was a good player. Yeah, really good player. Played #1 out at Penn State.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that. He coaches at the University of Rochester.
Yeah, he's a coach at the University of Rochester. So he was my biggest sparring partner, him and David Kroll. But, you know, they both left. And that was one of the reasons why I went down to Stearns, yeah.
With Joanna Toke.
Yeah.
I thought she won Division III, but Matt Nielsen told me, who coaches Division III, told me that she was in the semifinals twice.
Okay. I thought she won it too.
Fact checker. I have to look that up.
Yeah.
With tennis is expensive. And, you know, and that's one thing about Midtown, and I really appreciate service versus education. But, you know, they were providing a service. I knew in the first few days that this is not going to work out to my liking, because, you know, I was a director of tennis and there's 4 empty courts. The lights are off, bay of courts. And I went up to the front desk. That's the heartbeat of a tennis facility. A woman by the name of Kathy Bell. She did such an amazing job running that place. Like, and the way she trained people, she was so professional. And she was just following procedure. And I said, okay, no one's on these courts for the next 2 hours. I said, okay. I turn the lights on and I go down to the juniors and we spread out. And I'm told afterwards, you can't do that. I go, why? And they go, you have to have 6 kids per court. And I'm going, that's not going to work. I said, we'll eventually get 6 kids per court, but we can't have empty courts. But policy and procedure won out. With my train of thought, help me out. Where were we?
We were talking about Matt Nielsen.
Yeah. So, so you were fortunate to have. It's amazing, you know. Obviously, you think about the success you had, but how's it go? It takes a village to raise a child, but no one tells you where it is or how to get there. Yeah. I have his name down. Alex Popovic. I've seen him twice down here in Florida. He played at USF. You remember him?
Yes.
He's older than you too.
He was a lefty.
So he lost his temper, and don't do this, juniors. At a junior tournament, and you know, juniors can get cheated, and sometimes, you know, especially if you're Canadian, where you watch pro hockey and you get in a fight and you get 5 minutes penalty. Oh, you got in a fight, boys. Just go sit down for 5 minutes. So this might not be right in Canada. So he's really upset with the kid, and he punches the kid, and he's banned. I think it was for a year.
Jeez.
So the next thing is he spent all his time in Rochester. I remember he waxed Chad Riley, and I said, Riley, now you got a chance.
Yeah.
I said, this guy's going to be here for a long time, and
you brought over a group of players, and it must have been Richard who came down, and it was Emin Agayev. Do you remember that name? He was a very good player, and that was someone I really looked up to. And then I would play against him in futures way later on, but he came to Rochester.
Yeah, no,
Midtown, and then Robert Steckley as well.
no, I was with you at a tournament where you beat Steckley
Yeah, that's right. Well, that was years later.
years later, but
Yeah.
but you remember you saying you were happy you won. You go, I never had beaten that guy before.
Yeah, because he would always tune me up. Yeah, I remember Richard Bodian charting the match against Robert Steckley, and I had a match point. I lost it, and then he beat me in the third. But and you sent me it was on the Bill Jacobson CompuTennis computer at the time, and then you sent me the printout.
With all
yeah,
that,
just so many things.
With
come
all
to
this
mind.
history,
Yeah,
it must be fun for you to listen to these podcasts where we
Yeah.
talk about Bill Jacobson and
yeah,
Richard Bodian. I didn't want to do this, but I finally, okay, I'm going to do this. I brought in a coach that I trained
yeah.
because the progression, the learning, it was too slow. It was too slow. So I brought Bodian in, and probably the most unappreciated, misunderstood tennis coach because he just teaches technique so well.
Yeah,
And
he's
he-
very organic, right?
And you know, he's just,
Yeah,
you know, like lighten up a little bit. I mean,
Yeah.
just, you know, but with a huge staff, there's a perfect place for him. Perfect place
no,
for
he
him.
was great. Yeah,
You know, we have these Steve stories, and someone said to me, we haven't put one out in a long, long time. They said, did you run out of stories? I go, no, I haven't run out of stories. But one of those, my name in third person, Steve stories, is Richard Bodian. So Glenn William was very, very successful as a GM. I understand he just recently retired. And, you know, he can do so many things in circles better than I can. But we're talking about forehands and backhands. So, you know, that's my lane, and he's new, and he watches Richard Bodian teach tennis. And he goes, you got to get rid of that guy. And so I'm just, okay. And so what am I going to do, argue with him? I go, all right. So I went in and called Vic Braden up. I said, Vic, this guy teaches tennis fantastic. He's a fantastic tennis teacher. At this place I'm working at, 16 courts, I guess with fitness breakdown, there's a lot of indoor courts.
yeah,
And with, I said, yeah, I need to have you let him come work for you. And I said, I need to send him out there in 2 weeks. And Vic goes, okay. So I've been having a meeting with Bodian. But when he came in, it was like, you know, he could feed the right way, he could chart, he could film, he knew the checkpoints, he knew the group dynamics. He was a machine.
yeah.
And he was just
He worked around the clock. Yeah,
He's just a different level.
Yeah.
Different level of competency. So I have a meeting with Bodian, and this is a review if anybody's seen Steve's story. So I said, I got bad news and good news. The bad news is you're fired.
Yeah.
He kind of looks at me, but he was teaching like 50 hours, 55 hours a week.
Oh yeah.
So he was a cash cow. So if he was making $25 at 50 hours a week, the company, the bottom line, was making the same amount of money. So then Doug Cash comes into town and says, he's looking at the books, and he goes, where's Bodie? And I said, I fired him. And he goes, yeah, what's he doing now? I said, he's home getting organized. He's going to go work for Vic Braden. I would consider that a vertical move,
Yeah.
not a lateral move. And but yeah, to hear his name, he came in and with
Yeah, he was such a hard worker, and we saw him, you know, looking at videos. He's on one of the Vic Braden videos,
yeah.
hitting balls.
You know who else was there who went from doing an internship with us is you mentioned the other name, the Irish girl, Aoife Wilson.
Yes, and we drove her to the U.S. Open. So I spent 7 hours in a car with her.
She's out in Northern Cal teaching tennis. She works with Steve Roberts. We had Steve on as a guest. She was removed from her education. She's spent 2 years at Tyler Junior College studying tennis, playing tennis. She's on a scholarship. Then she went to Alabama. So I'm not sure. I think she was back in Ireland. And my recollection of that is she contacted me. She said, I don't remember any of the things I was taught. And then she came and did time Sounds like a jail sentence. She did time with us, and then she did time with Vic.
Yeah, I think it was over the summer, and then we drove her to New York, and then that was probably the end. But she was heading somewhere because then you were heading up to Toronto.
Yeah. There was a guy, there's a lot of us named James Jones, Steve Smith.
Yeah.
I remember being the guys coming into my office, GM and CFO, CO, whatever their titles were, and said, "You haven't fired anybody since you got here." And they told me, they said, "There's a pro that we need to fire. The corporate worm. You got to make a head roll." I'm going, "I'm not doing that." I go out and scream at 11-year-old Jeremy Wurtzman. I'm not going to fire somebody. From Dennis Vandermeer, learn what you do is you get them a new job. A little empathy, but that was something that I was wrong, or I should say, it didn't work. Where I said, "Let's do this, guys. Pay him a small salary. I'll kick in some money." My former wife helped out because he didn't have transportation, and I said, "It's so difficult for someone to come in and it's like put your name on the bio boards. They go fish."
Yeah.
They did have a window where they paid people a salary when they first came in.
Really?
But everybody liked the guy, and he was just. I think one thing that really for people to be successful, he's just really unorganized.
Yeah.
So we mentioned some of these names yesterday. Mike Larshide, I didn't know he had a win over you.
Yeah, he got me. So, yeah, you started this ladder. It was every Sunday night because that was the only time we could get court time or get every court, and you could either go up you could either play up or play down, and it was on in the lobby. You could see it every week, and you change it. It was like a printout, and you kind of knew where you stood. And so all the pros had to play. So Sunday night, so these pros were out there. If they're going to spend a Sunday night from 5 to 9 playing matches, they were going to take it seriously. And then we had all the juniors, and so there was probably 32 of us, and those matches meant a lot. And Mike Larshide, he got me in a third set, and I would just, you didn't let me, you don't even remember, but you didn't let me hear the end of that one. So.
No, when you said it the other day, I mean, I'll add that to my Greg Yahia
Yeah.
list.
You didn't have to coach him. He was a good player though.
No,
he
he
came
was.
forward a lot.
No, he was.
Good backhand.
He was athletic.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's teaching tennis in Georgia. I remember when I first went with the general manager and Mike. We went out to lunch. I just left Seguzo Bassett, and it was through Welby Van Horn and Philip Eisenberg. Philip Eisenberg, he owned the Welby Van Horn camp, and I remember just being kind of impressed where Phil put it together where there was a conference call, and at first it was be the national coach of Puerto Rico. So the gentleman who was in charge, he had a heart attack in his 40s, and tragically he passed away. So that made the process delayed. And then I was scheduled to go, and American Airlines was on strike, so there was no flight. And then I was offered the job. And I turned that down, and I went to Rochester. There was too much travel involved. But I do remember that the general manager had Mike Larshide call me up and going, "Where are you? We need you up here." And they were very nice. They waited maybe 6 weeks. I said, "Well, I'm not really 100% sure what I'm going to do." And but no, I didn't know that he had a win over you. The ladder, you would most likely had to defend, and then you could move up.
You could go up, yeah.
But ladders, they don't exist anymore.
Oh, and I loved it, yeah.
Do you remember the format? I don't remember the format.
You had to play 2 out of 3 full sets.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Chuck Reese would have approved.
Yeah, he would have approved. Yeah, there wasn't any. We played full ad. Yeah, there wasn't any tiebreakers. And you hosted tournaments there.
There was a guy, Paul Lobin, South African.
Yeah.
He wasn't on staff.
Right.
He had some visa problems, and there was a guy named Roy Coopersmith. Well, I understand that his daughter is a very good player. I've never met him, but he was there before, so they weren't there when I was. But Paul Lobin was still in the area, and South African, but he had the only reason he had a visa problem.
Right.
So at that point, I quit playing tennis basically. I was at Tyler Junior College and we were second class citizens. And I found myself, I was going to the gym, I was running, I was hitting balls 4 hours a day when I first got there because I was going to be at least good enough to beat guys in the lineup. There was they were an All-American, they were national champions and such, pretty high level. And I just finally said to myself, I'm not here to fight get these dummies who, like Vic who. But so Lobbin was taking shots at me because I didn't play. And then it was a few years later that because of my problems with my feet. But I remember I set up a pro tournament. And fortunately it worked out where Hubert Crash came in.
Right.
And he won the tournament. You were probably too young to play in it.
I ball boyed
Okay, so
for that match.
So before the match starts, so there's it's the winter time is Rochester.
No, you had a full stance. Yeah.
Yeah, we had the bleachers full, and of course what I did before the match is had a Tennessee teaching exhibition.
Yeah.
So Hubert's out there and he's shadow swinging. And I've got a 6-year-old in front of him, and he said, "Okay, now let's play." And Hubert became number 1 in the 35s and the ITFs. It was an amazing story. He was at Texas. He was in the lineup at Texas. His mother's Japanese, his father's German. He grew up in Canada, pretty international guy. And then Dave Anderson was hosting a money tournament, and he basically told Crash and proved to Crash by knocking some balls around that you need to change your game. He changed his game and still played in the lineup.
Wow, I didn't know.
But so all those things helped out because again, that's the reason we make these slow motion videos. Is that you just can't. Well, your backswing's too big. It just, you have all the centrifugal force, you're pulling horizontally. You say, okay, let's go to work. You got to make a video and send it to parents. And they are so verbose. Then we get around to saying, okay, Ferris wheel versus merry-go-round.
Yeah.
What comes to your mind when I say Willie Shooty?
Willie Shooty. Yeah, he was, he definitely kept it fun. He talk to you for hours. He spent a lot of time, I believe after you went up north, he stayed on and was helping out the program.
Yeah, coffee with Willie. He got all the blue hairs. Yeah. Even the bald guys like me. He coffee with Willie in the morning. He was a natural salesman, but he came in and we made him a technician. Everybody had to make videos. Yes. And Greg Yahia was, some people coach out of love, some people coach out of respect. I remember. It's like, say, someone like Steckley, who was a national champion in Canada, or it could have been one of the Rochester kids where if it was 70 central strokes, it wasn't myself making the videos. It was, 7 different pros going through it. And, for our listeners, the best way to do that is you film the forehand volley, and then you put yourself in front of the camera. You don't do all 7 strokes. You just do 1 stroke at a time. But Shooty, he stayed with the company. Then he was a director or a general manager of a club in Indiana. You probably know the name of it. I think that's where Doug Cash was based for a long time.
Yeah.
But this is another Steve story. Dave Bone, you remember that name?
Yes. Dave Bone, he came over to our house and taught all of us, my whole family, how to string. I think he helped us get a stringer, and he showed us. We got that binder. You'd come and you'd have every racket in the binder, and he'd set up. We paid him to give us lessons on how to string rackets when I was probably 11, 12 years old.
He ended up owning the USRSA, the Racket Stringer Association.
Which is unbelievable.
But he came in. He came in from Ferris State, ultra professional. So I'm in this meeting. He's being interviewed, and he goes, "Well, I just graduated from Ferris State, and I really like to work here." And I looked at him and I go, "I invented Ferris State," which just wanted to give him the knee-jerk reaction. So he knew I had, at that time. I mean, I later had gone there to make presentations and such, but no, I just said, "Hey, we were first." A lot of people don't know that Tyler Junior College was first.
Right.
In '74, they had 1 class a semester, but in '81, it was a totally comprehensive tennis teaching curriculum. But when Glenn William came in, talking about Willie Shooty making it fun, the corporate shuffle. So I was a director, so the new GM, new sheriff in town. And again, that's a big operation, and I understand you gotta pay the bills. But so my lane is we got to get people playing better. So the corporate shuffle, this is the same guy who looked at Bodie and go, we got to get rid of that guy. So not much time had gone by, and there was a meeting, and it was the general manager. Shooty was, he was really the social coordinator. Yeah. Everybody had a title. Bone was the administrative coordinator. I mean, and there were so many complexities, that bright guy. So the new boss had talked to these two guys. Some of these politics, you were so young when you would not have known what was going on, but I spent a lot of time with your parents. They would have known what was going on. So Glenn William comes in, and then he goes back, Midland, Michigan. Comes back a second time, but before he comes back home, I said, hey, when you come, you're married, I'm married, you have young kids, I have young kids. You're going to find it's going to be next to impossible to get in the morning session of the Montessori, but the afternoon session works. I said, I've called the school up, and that's just be one option for you. I said, we can have, the two wives meet each other, have lunch. And so there's always a mission. So Bodian, and it was Raul Raimundo. Remember him? He's from, you mentioned, he's from Erie, PA.
He went to Mercyhurst.
Same, he's probably older than your wife, right?
Oh, yeah.
He was a pretty good player, too.
He coached my wife.
Oh, really?
At times, yeah.
But he could play as well.
He's a good player.
Athletic and fast. So,
Brother that played as well.
So I'm giving the guys the gears. Boom, 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 boom. You have 1 hour. During lunch, I'm sending the two little girls, Glenn Williams' two kids, down to the courts. You're going to film their forehand. You're going to teach them how to forehand and film their forehand again. This is like a scene from a movie. Yeah. And so I knew it was coming. So I'm walking around with my little shoulder bag, and the court that I got to redesign got a classroom office, conference room, and all I got to do is pop in the VHS. So we've had meetings, and we have to lighten up the teaching. It's too serious. It's da-da-da-da-da. And I said this to a dean one time. He said I was rocking the boat, and I said, you can't rock the boat if it's underwater. And when I look at a tennis program, it's underwater. I mean, these kids aren't learning. Money, to me, it's highway robbery. It's just criminal. It's dirty money. So anyway, the three of them want to talk to me about it. I said, guys, I just need 3 minutes of your time. Plug in the videotape. And they have no idea what's on there. And it's these two little girls hitting the ball, and then they're hitting the ball again. It's a 1 minute loop, and then another 1 minute loop, another 1 minute loop. And then Glenn William looks at it and goes, those are my kids. I go, exactly. I said, now we have to have another meeting. Bring your wife. And, and it's just, you have to fight for your principles. But I've traveled many places where what you have to do is, Dennis Vandermeer was so clever at this, to say, okay, we have match play, match simulated drills, and over here we have technique. And when I was in Tyler, Texas, the first 5 years, the second 5 years, we produced more state champions than Dallas and Houston combined. But it was, I think, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, it was match play simulated drills. Monday, Wednesday, Friday was technique. And the kids who worked on technique, I remember Mel Conrad and his wife, but Mel played, and eventually he asked me if I could make a videotape for him. And, both his kids were very good tennis players, but then he knew that why these younger kids went further with their tennis, because they were going to the Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Yeah. They're like, who wants to go shadow swing, drop hit balls? But our listeners, you need to go to Tennis Intelligence Applied, go to GreatBaseTennis.com, and you can see Jeremy, his crummy, lousy backhand volley.
And underspin.
Yeah, but we'd have to dig it out, but we have the whole 9 yards.
Even the goal sheet.
Yeah, I would hesitate on that. But we do have a library, and when I film people, document development, because I don't want anyone to come back and tell me you ruined my game.
Yeah,
So I
definitely didn't do that.
would say that would be number one. Let's talk about Ty Tucker.
Uh-oh.
Ty Tucker. I mean, with what's the first few things that come to your mind you think of? I mean, first of all, I should have some notes down on. He's won a bunch.
Yeah, he's a winner.
And how does Ty Tucker win? What makes Ohio State? What do you think comes to your mind? And they've been very successful.
I would say the biggest thing is he makes every day like it's the round of 16 quarters of the NCAA tournament. Every day of practice is so intense. It's just you go out to those matches and it feels so easy just because of the amount of pressure and intensity and he just creates an amazing environment. It's hard to describe. You really should go see it because unless you're a part of it or see it, you really don't understand.
The first time I was there with Andy Fitzell, who's now worked with a lot of players from Ohio State. You were telling me you've looked a lot of film with J.J. Wolf.
Yeah.
You could see what Andy did with his game.
Yeah, he's changed a ton. Yeah, and I'd known JJ just from watching him play at Ohio State, but then to see the changes that he's made is, it's impressive, and we use that, we use those videos to show our players the changes that they need to make. Just because that's someone that they've looked up to.
But yeah, we did a clinic in Cincinnati, and then Andy and I we were doing in Philadelphia, but we had to pick up Connor's car. He had graduated. And so I said, let's go up and watch Ty Tucker for 2 days. It's a sight to behold. I was at the Big Ten. There's a funny story that I couldn't go to the NCAA. My brother Matt had called me up, and my mother wasn't doing well. And it worked out that he was right, and I didn't go to the NCAA tournament. Went to see my mother. But I had gone to the Big Ten, and they were playing Michigan. Bruce Burke was the coach I spent a little time with Burke. He came to a couple workshops because he was with Tiley. So no negative against Burke, but the Michigan team, they're in the finals the next day, and it's a little bit overcast. It's not raining, but they're inside. They've already won their semi, and I had a few juniors with me. So, okay, we'll watch Michigan. And, then Ty, I knew where the Ohio State team was, but I'm pretty sure no one else knew where they were, except for maybe managers. Oh, no, that's another thing. Ty doesn't like managers. He doesn't like trainers.
Yeah.
So this is the day before they play the Big Ten. And I think, at that time, I think it was Americans on the team versus the foreigners. And, I think they might have been playing for who gets the cookies when they go to Subway.
Yeah, exactly.
And even at dessert, where it's like, okay, you guys are a team and you guys are a team. What do you think dinner costs? Who's got who's got the closest number? And if this group gets the closest number, you can have ice cream. In this group, you don't get ice cream. And I remember, Tiley talking about the two of them together, different approaches, and both so successful. Yeah, maybe it's because Tiley's father, Alan, was a boxer, but Tiley's father, very tough cookie. But Tiley used to like it when the kids would almost get in a fist fight and who's going to ride shotgun. Just like the craziness, like, oh, this is good. The testosterone. I mean, I tell kids all the time, have you ever been around, like you were quite good at it, where it's like, come on.
Yeah.
With
Ty loves chaos. I'll say that.
No, and the drills.
Yeah.
They play with double headers, and but the workouts they have, like how they lead up to that.
Yeah.
Now, my opinion is that comes from Tiley taking Peter Burwash drills, because he did something similar when Illinois would warm up at one point.
Yeah, and I coming into the Big Ten, or even. We played Illinois and I was at Florida. They were doing the dynamic stretching. They were doing a lot of those warm-ups and really the volley. They came into a building and you knew Illinois was there. And there was a whole routine that they did. I remember to this day when I was 17, 18 years old and seeing it. It was so different than any other team. It was very organized. It was by the minute. It started with volley, then they moved back, and there was one up, one back. And listening to the other podcasts about Jim Verdick, and it very similar. You can kind of see it. You can kind of see where that came from.
It's like with Nadal, where he's like a boxer, he runs back to the corner.
Yeah.
They're up at the net taking photos before the match starts.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a very structured warm-up. And Ty, now, that wasn't so much the case when I started, but by my senior year when I left, it was very much.
Oh, it's fun. It's fun to watch.
Yeah.
It's just fun to watch.
Yeah.
And
But it's evolved. And,
Yeah.
And now a lot of parents and fans will come out and watch that.
So I said to Connor,
Yeah.
do you get tired during double headers? But so it's not just a double header; it's the
Yeah.
the warm up before, and
The matches.
the matches.
Yeah, it's never enough. You think you're done, or you think you put in hours, and there's always more. He's never satisfied. He'll finish the NCAA tournament, and summer starts. You're out there practicing that summer, and I remember. He was there though. When I picked up my first ATP point. I was in Pittsburgh. He helped me get a wild card. I was a sophomore in college, and he drove. He drove 2 hours, watched me. We went to dinner, and then he drove back. And it's things like that. But when I got back, I lost the next day, and he says you better be back at practice that Thursday. So it wasn't. It was short lived. But then he would also bounce it off with he'd always be there. At your biggest moments, or if you really needed him in some tough moments. So, he was your toughest critic, and he'd be on you, but he was always there for you.
Yeah, big bark, but
Yeah.
Big heart.
Yeah, big heart. Yeah.
No, but Connor will say about Ohio State tennis, which is a compliment. He goes, if people were just to listen, they wouldn't know it's tennis. It's like, this is football.
Yeah.
This
Right.
is football.
No, absolutely.
With
I know Ryan Day. He comes out and works out with Ty. He's the head coach of the Ohio State football team.
really.
Yeah.
I saw Ty play in the 18s, Dallas, group of sort of go in Thanksgiving time. Byron Black, I think Ty won 7-6, 6-0. He had a little more hair back then, but I remember telling Scotty Perlman, he's coaching in Kansas, and goes, I want this, Smitty, I want this guy. I go, that guy's not going to Kansas. But Perlman got him to go on a visit. And, but I think with Ty, which is a positive in many, many ways, really in a lot of ways, what we should do is curriculum. And Andy Fritzell's always saying, don't pigeonhole yourself, because the GreatBase, young kids starting, it's a body of work, young kids starting.
Right.
With going back to Greg Yahaya, when I first got there, Greg said, well, you and I'll probably clash because, my expertise is in coaching beginners. At that time, little did he know is that every time you look at our practice, it looks like we're teaching people like they're beginners, because it's fundamentals. It's fundamentals. And with Ty, a practice match, I think that's a little bit of, he spent some time at Valentieri's, right?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
I know he's with the USDA, he's a high-level junior, but it's almost like there's no such thing as a practice match.
Yeah.
I remember your father and brother came down during a semester break, and it was I said, okay. Your dad did the same thing where he asked me to talk to John Daly, who was Mark's coach.
Right.
I said, I'm a club coach, and I'm calling you up about Mark Wurtzman, who plays for you, and we did a little video work for him. And do you know who I am?
Yeah.
He was very nice to me when I was watching some Ohio State matches. So.
He doesn't remember that.
But with we made that videotape, so you're same, not near, not even close. But so when you're Rochester, you needed more competition. But so we made the tape about we did that in our last podcast, all these situational drills.
Yeah.
And I remember you saying with Ty, no, it's just like, let's
You
compete.
better win. Yeah. Yeah. He didn't want, and in both ways, he didn't want guys. He wanted me to push those guys down low, and also, just to have that competitiveness. So if I'm working on.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say for our listeners, not everyone who can teach can coach, and not everyone can coach can teach. And the listeners, those who have junior kids, it's not really the job. It shouldn't be the job of a college coach. I mean, should a college coach have to, even though you find out John Wooden, the basketball coach, okay, we're going to work on dribbling, passing. You keep refining skills, but it's not. You think of a football player with the 3-point stance. A lot of times kids go to college and they should have to go back and reinvent the wheel. Yeah. But before you go to college, or even before you go to an academy,
right,
you should have the fundamentals down.
Yeah.
So I have tremendous amount of respect for Tucker.
And that's I think that's why I was so benefited in a way. I had the GreatBase, kind of a Tiley type structure, and then I had Ty, and I think I kind of had both, and it definitely worked for me. But just think about all the players that could definitely be affected by that and impacted by that. But I was lucky enough at a young age to learn how to hit the ball and how to play.
I think look back at your game though, in singles, could have played the yellow zone more, could have transitioned more because you had such great volleys.
Yeah, I just hated to lose. I just didn't want to miss. I didn't want to.
Yeah.
If you go to the net, you lose at a faster rate. So I think I was.
Yeah.
I hated losing.
But that was with that's one negative of the UTR. Is the UTR, you played a lot of matches where if you experimented you're coming up, you experimented in the first set. Now.
Yeah, you do.
Now you have this 10-point tiebreaker, so forget it. But you experiment in the first set, you're serving volley, you're doing something different, you lose the set, but you're going to win the match.
Right.
It's like Chrissy Everett asked Djokovic, you're winning 6-1, 6-2. Don't you want to add to your game a little bit, go forward? You hear people say he's the greatest of all time. It's like when he accepted the trophy one year at the Australian Open, he said, Mr. Laver, I know I need to go to the net more. I'm working on it.
Yeah, it's powerful.
If you were to write your, what age could you pick? But there's that website where athletes, you write a letter to yourself. So, whether it's coming out of college, coming out of juniors, what would be some advice that you'd give yourself if you wrote the letter, Dear Jeremy?
Yeah, I think I touched on it a little bit. One, I'd go back and I'd try to play doubles a lot more. I think that would be something that would have been really special to be able to play the Grand Slams and hopefully would have been successful enough to do that if I would have given it more time. I would say that I would kind of what we talked about just now. I just was too scared to scare. I was fearful to make errors, and so just trying to be way more aggressive in a lot of these futures tournaments and challengers tournaments, and not be so worried about the results and treating that as if that was Wimbledon when there was a $15,000 future. I really should have been using those tournaments to develop and get better.
Yeah.
I would have definitely, we touched on this earlier, maybe we didn't go into as much detail, but I wasn't athletic enough, physical enough. I got into pretty good shape in college. I got into pretty good shape after college, but I would have focused way more on the physical game. I just was not, I wasn't a beast, physically, and maybe playing more sports or other sports as a kid would have helped. But I always would give it the, I'm not great mentally, or but really that was a bunch of that wasn't true. Really, what it was I was scared to go push myself physically, and I think that would have really helped me become a better tennis player. I
Great.
love
It's
that,
great to see Rajiv Ram.
Yeah, yeah, it's nice to see him still playing.
I remember talking to my son about playing doubles. Andrew Rube at Harvard told me that he wanted to play tennis until he played Wimbledon. But, Connor had figured out where the way the money works. It's just, am I going to do this for 10 more years? And it's like Austin Krajicek. I think he's top 20 now, and hopefully he stays healthy. And he's, born in 1990, so just turned 32. It's amazing. Play another 8 years.
Easily.
With how about with parents? What would you tell parents?
Yeah, with parents, I would be much more focused in on not the results. I think we're way too focused in on results. Really just trying to get better, trying to develop, trying to make the changes, at an early age so that they are able to go out and be successful later on. It really doesn't matter who's winning in the 12s and the 14s, really even the 16s. It's really about development and making the corrections so that you're able to go out to have a successful career.
Yeah, the other day, giving you a little bit of tour of the area, and we went by Boca Prep across the street from Chris Everett's. I believe Marty Fish was in the starting five and Roddick wasn't. With, it's fun fitness. I mean, I always tell people I used to love to go to Baltieri's and watch Tommy Haas play basketball. I don't know basketball, but to me, he looked like he could play really, really well. You played Roddick. You beat Roddick. I remember you came to help. You came to help me. I was going to help you with your game, but it worked out. I was doing a workshop for coaches, and you just got out of college, and it was like something called like the rookie camp.
Yeah.
And Roddick, I remember giving you a hard time. Is Roddick? You said he was on the other side of the track really early in the morning when you guys were walked to breakfast, walking back, and he had done 24 100s, and he was doing that every day, or something like that. I remember saying to you,
200. So I think he did 12 200s under a certain amount of time. I think it was like 20 something seconds, and then he'd take a break, and then do 12 more. And so it's 24. Then he'd come out to the courts.
Yeah, Brian Wilson was with you. I remember.
Yeah.
So then
It's a group of guys, yeah.
then I said, well, then you do it the next day. Just go the next day. It's amazing. Like with
Yeah, I should have.
Austin Krajicek was one of the better players in the country, if not number one. I mean, I'm going to guess he was number one junior at one time. Ashley Weinhold. I trained her parents how to teach tennis, and it's so tough financially. I said, well, why don't I do this? Is we'll put a package together, and then you can go places and teach parents.
Yeah.
What's it like to come up in the junior ranks? I mean, you were very successful. You were number one in the juniors. Anyway, they weren't maybe confident or comfortable. But I think also, too, is that they're thinking, no one else is doing it. But, I always tell people, don't have insecurities. Don't worry what other people are thinking, because really they're not even thinking about you. They say you have to be 80 years old before you realize people aren't thinking about you. But with Ashley, Michael Center, I worked it out with him where she was living in Austin, and I said, instead of going over and wanting to hit with one of the guys, why don't you go over and chart a match? Why don't you really become a student of the game? And with Austin, I can remember he was staying with us. You stayed at that place we had in Tampa many times. He's playing with Isner, and I said, well, just take this camera and here's the pole, here's the camera, go film points, and bring it back. We'll look at it tonight. But no one else was doing it. Didn't want to do it. I think that you have to be one who can think outside the box, and you don't want to be different to be different. But I tell kids that we mentioned this on a podcast about routines is when the tennis channel's on, have a clipboard with. We have a simple T chart and just chart 10 points.
Yeah.
With that, let me ask you: do your players find it really difficult to find extra time because of academics? And I mean, you have the restrictions with how many hours they can practice.
Yeah, I will say before, one thing I tell my players all the time is don't be a clone. And you always said that to me. You know, you don't do what everyone else is doing because they don't know what they're doing. So I think that's a great point. And I would say now a lot video is a lot bigger. You know, it's now everyone's kind of videoing, right? So at the time,
Yeah, but the machine is only as smart as the operator.
Yeah, it's absolutely. I 100% agree with that. But
I've got myself in a little bit of trouble saying clones taught by clowns. I mean, you and I had a tournament yesterday, and it's some positives for sure. There's so many players. There's a tournament every weekend. It's like the 70s. People are playing tennis. It's too expensive. Back draws to 4.
Yeah.
No ad. But you can be there for a number of weekends, and you can really just count on one hand, come up with 5 players that don't play, serve +1, stay back, and just going for, as Chris Clore says, launching missiles from the baseline. And Craig O'Shaughnessy, I know you said you followed.
Yeah.
What he puts out, the big lie.
Brain game tennis, yeah.
The big lie that you can't come to the net.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about Indiana tennis, and we'll sign off here.
Indiana tennis, yeah. I don't know what I'm allowed to say or not say. So that's a good question.
How about the pandemic? You have players that are there extra time.
Yeah. So we were fortunate enough. 3 of our guys were granted another year, which they would have never gotten, and then they played half of the year in 2020. To be honest, I'm not thrilled that the NCAA did that because I think it's opened up a whole can of worms. There's players that seems like they're never graduating 7-8 years, 4 degrees, and they're still playing college tennis and transferring 3-4 times. But our team will definitely, we didn't get to benefit from this last year. We had no 5th years, but this coming year we're going to have 3 players that should not have this extra year. So yeah, it gives them more hope, gives them another opportunity to try to help our team, gives them an opportunity to try to put some stuff on their resumes. And that's kind of neat for those guys.
Do you have walk-on tournament, or do you have people who can try to feed into the team?
So we recruit a lot of our walk-ons. We don't necessarily have tryouts or on campus. But, our roster size, they want us around 10. This year we'll have 12 because we have a few extras that weren't, they're 5th years.
And they have a club tennis program? I'm sure they do.
Yeah, they call it Tennis on Campus, TOC, and they practice at nighttime. Yeah, but it's club. It's run through the.
And there's
club sports.
I mean, I would think of a university like a small city. I mean, there's got to be some decent players on the club team.
And there's some 10 UTRs.
Wow.
Some players up there and have played some big tournaments, and it's all player run. So it's what we've seen is we've had some strong teams, but it's whoever's really the most organized. If you have someone that's really organized and knows what they're doing, the team's going to be good and they're going to travel. So one of our managers a few years back, this was before the pandemic, he was the captain of the club team, but also the manager of our team. And he, really did a great job with the club team as well.
With your 3 children, do any of them play tennis?
Yeah, so they're just starting out. They don't think I know anything about tennis, so it's ever. So we're getting a lot of. It's not easy to coach your kids. That's something Gretchen and I both learned. But yeah, so Quinn and Maya are just starting. They play basketball and soccer. They have a lot of fun with that. And then Buck will play tennis. I think he's going to be a good little player. And our girls will start playing a lot more as well. But I think I've noticed, sometimes we don't get on the courts very much, but they're playing these other sports, basketball, soccer, swimming. And you see improvements just by, being out there playing other sports and the movements and the athleticism. So that really has shown me that it shouldn't just be one sport.
Buck, great name.
Yeah.
Family name Buckley.
Yes.
With, I forgot this, but talking to you about your family, I think one of your keys to success is one of your grandmothers used to walk 7 miles a day.
That's right. Around Cobb's Hill.
7 miles a day.
Yeah.
With how many
Get
years?
up at 5 in the morning, 7 miles, and every morning, and then go to the donut shop and have coffee and talk to it. I think it was a doctor, a lawyer, and a judge, and the 4 of them would have coffee every morning. Yeah.
Did you do that in the wintertime too?
Yeah.
Wow.
Never missed a day.
With
Yeah.
Bobby Knight,
Yes.
legendary coach, University of Indiana. I'm a Bobby Knight fan. I know he shouldn't have thrown the chair. He shouldn't have kicked the kid. But people say he knows so much about basketball. Being at his workplace, give us a couple Bobby Knight.
Yeah, I mean,
thoughts.
Bobby Knight, he's not talked about very much at IU. You know, it's too bad because of the way it kind of ended. Yeah, which is unfortunate. There's some pictures up, but he's around. He lives in Bloomington now, just a few miles away. He says that's when he was his happiest, when he was there. And yeah, I've gotten to know some of the guys that have played. Were the same age or similar ages towards the end of his career. And yeah, I'm not sure they're made for this podcast, but they're good stories for sure.
Family show.
Yeah.
No profanity. Well, I like Bobby Knight, and I tell this to tennis kids all the time. It's not about your confidence. It's going to be about the coach's confidence. That's Bobby Knight.
Yeah.
I'm the one who's going to put you in the game. And so I want to be confident in your skills. I do think that tennis kids really struggle when they get to college because they haven't been part of a team. We say it over and over, and this comes from Braden. Confidence comes from winning. Winning comes from skills. Skills come from practice and know-how. But Bobby Knight, his players always had to have notebooks, taking notes.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I mean, he brought, talk about bringing basketball to a community. I mean, the Olympians, because he was Olympic coach, so he brought all those players around campus. Coach K was one of his assistants for a couple of years.
played for him at West Point, yeah.
And then became the assistant at IU, and then went back and was the head coach at Army. So just the people that were around was incredible.
Yeah, there's several books written on Bobby Knight. Yeah, I think now in junior tennis, you have to be so politically correct. I'm always telling parents, hey, it's okay. The coach got emotional. That means the coach cares.
Yeah.
And it's interesting in Canada, the Canadians are so polite, but in Canadian tennis, the coaches, profanity is okay. In the U.S., profanity, I'm always asking kids, have you seen a PG-13 movie? Raise your hand if you've seen a PG-13 movie. I'll raise their hand and say, okay. I make sure no young kids are around, but it's like just a little profanity. Now, parents need to know they do it. I ask kids, do your parents ever get upset? Have they ever made the mistake and said, fire truck? Where when you swear, your heart rate goes down. People are upset. It's a form of relaxation. So we don't condone that, but I don't think that kids who are playing junior tennis, American kids, are prepared for college tennis because they're never in a locker room. They lose, and maybe it's not the Range Rover, but they lose and they get in the fancy car and they drive away. And I'm always telling mom and dad too that, don't try to be the technician.
Yeah.
But your kid's body language, their fighting spirit. Just ask, the whole thing. I saw a T-shirt the other day. Everybody knows the only two things you control: your attitude and your efforts.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell our listeners, was I on a scale of 1 to 10? Now, how bad was I?
The podcast?
No, not the podcast. Coaching you and your little kid. We have kids now, and this is just amazing. Jeremy said this to me. We have many people come, our network, our alumni, and I go 3-3. And I remember you visiting one time. You went 3-3. It was always 1-1.
Yeah, we didn't do 3-3.
And it was go backwards. And it was do knee touch.
Yeah, it was. You had to. There was a way you would bend down, and if you didn't do it, you couldn't bend at the back. You had to bend at the knees.
Dump the basket over again.
Yeah.
And but it's not parents that have brought it down. It's in this country. It's just society.
Yeah.
It's softer and softer.
Yeah, no, there's many stories. I remember once you came over for dinner. You probably don't remember this, but for whatever reason, you looked in our fridge and you saw the chocolate syrup was in there. And the next day, you said, what do? You take the milk and you take the chocolate syrup and you put the chocolate syrup in the milk and you make chocolate milk and you think you're going to be a good tennis player. And you know, you just you would pick up on things and you would definitely wouldn't let me hear the end of it. So
I remember your mother Judy. I had her. She looked at me cross-eyed, and you had, you know, beautiful colonial house, this white house with shutters, and you know you were stuck. You know, where okay, I need to get to a better tennis environment, and I said, well, why don't you sell this place and just have a small condo here and a small condo in say, Florida or California. And at that time, that was not the right thing to say. I've said that to other people as well, where it's, but I, you know, with parents,
Rochester.
but with parents, you know now that you are a parent, and I know you and I are going to meet on it later today, is that the tennis is just too expensive.
Yeah.
You know, we like to think we're doing our part by giving all this free content out. It's just too expensive. You know, you need to find a way with going back to the point where you don't need to have a tennis lesson every day.
Right.
Cole Reeves, you know, he was a guest on our podcast where in some ways you should be able to eliminate the pro. I mean, can't you do baskets and this and that? And, you know, that's one thing when you were working with me at Midtown.
No privates. I don't think I ever had privates. I can remember. But anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, what I was going to say is we didn't do the traditional thing where we did it. We called it, you know, those stress busters, want to work out, those drills with just get all these people running. We did that to the point where you even had so many people participating. We did it by level. You know, it wasn't by 3-5, 4-5. It was like, if your fitness level is here, you can come to this workout. Your fitness level, that was for the adults. But, you know, when a junior comes to visit us, we say, hey, go feed some balls. And if there's a bag of balls or a cart of balls, and they stand on the wrong side, and they grab a ball and they have to walk away from the basket. And I go, hey, kid, you've never fed a tennis ball. You're right-handed, put the basket on your left hip. You've never fed a ball. That's a problem. But if you have a staff of 6, and you know, that doesn't mean you have to have 6 feeders.
Right.
You know, that's how you can get filming done and charting done, and you know, someone comes in and I like to have you know, maybe it's 2-3 lessons, but it's not called like, okay, take a private lesson. It's, you know, compatibility program. Come in and you're going to join our program, but this is what you got to do for the first 2 or 3 sessions. Videotape is obviously mandatory, prerequisite, but no, you have to come in, learn the checkpoints, you know, learn the practice routines. Right. But typically what happens to junior program, mom and dad just write a check, you get in line, and next thing you know, you're running across the baseline hitting forehand.
Yeah, exactly. Side to side. Yeah. No, but yeah, you taught us how to, and I know hundreds and thousands of people, but, you know, especially me, how to teach myself. And that was, you know, can never repay you for that. So that's huge.
Well, talk about pay.
Yeah.
Is that
take you to dinner.
You've heard this, is that I get 22.2% of your lifetime earnings, and if you hadn't met me, your wife would have never married you. So I get 22.2. Maybe I should knock that down to 11.1. But anyway, I've been saying that for years. I actually, when I ran this program where people got a degree in tennis teaching, I actually said that the first day. I said, you know, some of our graduates, this is a long time ago, you know, some of our graduates are making $100,000 a year. And I said, you know, the program for pharmacy, and there are other programs where graduates are doing quite well, but I'm pretty sure that our graduates are making the most money. And I said, that's where you just have to sign this papers going around that I get 22.2%. And some of them actually thought they bought that. I could ramble forever. Here's the story. I've got Dennis Vandermeer is in my office. He's on campus. He's training tennis teachers. And Pat Vandermeer, they're talking about their T-shirt designs for the summer. I've got a proposal on my desk where, you know, Braden's coming to visit, and Dennis is, you know, he's sitting right at my desk and he's reading the proposal. And Nick Bollettieri calls me up and he says, Stevie, my boy, you know, I need some coaches from you. and I'll give you $500 a coach. I said, Nick, if I do that, I lose my job. I lose my job. But no, it's been great having you visit. Great to have you on the podcast. I mean, I do think that just having you come yesterday and say, I was doing that. You were shadow swinging and showing people how to hit the ball yesterday, and you came to Memphis with your team when I was doing that work with a nonprofit, and I almost forgot. You came and spent the day with us, and you're leaving, and you had the match that night.
Yeah.
So you're, just wearing blue jeans, and I go, Wurtzman, get back over here. And I said, let me feed you a few balls before you leave, because and there were some parents watching, and it's interesting how you've just stayed with it too.
Yeah.
I mean, people lose it. I mean, I think of his boy, his father is from Scotland, and worked with him and helped him rebuild his game. And then I relocated from Texas to Florida, and then he came to visit, and he totally reverted back.
Wow.
In 1 year's time. And it varies from one person to the next, but if someone's changing their game and they have to continually work on basics.
Yeah.
Brain memory, that's something that Braden used to always talk about, is they'll revert back. And, so if someone's made a change, like say someone's had a Western grip, and you tell them at least get to a semi, change the contact point, rub a ball up against a wall like this, and don't stop doing it. A few minutes here for this routine, a few minutes here for that routine.
Yeah. No, there was a lot of repetitions.
Yeah.
5 sets of 5. And we had all
the track, that's one other thing. I mean, could just go on.
St. John
and on.
Fisher, yeah. I have
And
nightmares about that track.
Yeah,
Matt Black.
a kid named Matt Black.
Yes.
But you always, it was just water off. Maybe it's because you had an older brother, again, that you could handle the criticism.
I had to run you made me break a 7 minute mile, 7 minutes, 6:55. So Matt Nielsen was very fast too. He could run a good mile. And, but anyways, yeah, you had a pacer, I think for the first and the last lap, I believe it was. And and I beat the.
But you were a young kid,
I
7
beat
minutes.
the 7 minute mile, 6:55.
But you had the nickname Turtle. I think
you were there.
I didn't give you the nickname. I always tell people don't let nicknames stick. But I think that you were always beating older players. But yeah, that was fun. We're going over behind St. John Fisher and having the track and the gym and you got to train like an athlete.
Yeah, St. John Fisher, it's a university, so they had all they had everything.
Yeah,
I think 5 outdoor hard courts.
Yeah, summer's gone by. I mean, I used to be able to do this. If I went back now and just recollection is, what as a tennis teacher, tennis coach, what you've done from summer to summer.
Yeah.
And those were some fun summers.
I mean, the nice setup there was you had so much space and trees in the back, and it was 70, 75 degrees every day. It just doesn't get that hot, so you could be out there all day.
Yeah, and that was back in the day where you pack a lunch.
We go in the gym there, yeah.
Kids, you say brown bag it, they don't even know what that means. But anyway, this is another of those podcasts for a long flight.
That's right.
But no, Jeremy, thanks for being a guest. Thanks for coming to visit.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, listeners, podcast in the books. Number 100. We're going to get there with our fact checker, and he's going to tell us how many mistakes we made over the last 100 podcasts. Anyway, adios, amigos.